My 315-pound fiancé told me to lose 28 pounds for our wedding. I asked if he'd diet too. He laughed. Grooms don't have to. I set my ring down. Mason was at a work conference 5 years ago. His confidence and humor made me laugh until my stomach hurt. He was large, but I didn't care. I believed that how someone treated you mattered more than their body. When we started dating, I was 145 pounds. I wore size 6. Mason repeatedly praised my beauty. He couldn't think I'd desire him. 3 years together led to engagement. Mason proposed at our first date restaurant. He dropped down on one knee and cried, saying he wanted to make me happy forever. I said yes because I loved him and thought he loved me as I was. The wedding planning began quickly. Mason had all kinds of opinions. He wanted a specific venue, caterer, and band. He preferred navy and gold. He requested guests I had never heard of. I let him make most of the selections since he was so eager and I wanted him to have his dream wedding. Then we hired the photographer. Mason spent 5 hours researching photographic packages online. Studying sample wedding albums was like studying for an exam. He created spreadsheets comparing pricing, styles, and editing choices. I loved that he wanted to capture our special day. After we paid the deposit, Mason sat me at the kitchen table. He wanted to discuss something essential. He contemplated how we might seem in the images. He wanted our wedding album to be something we'd always be proud of. I concurred. I also desired that. Mason advised me to reduce weight. He stated the camera added 8 pounds, and he didn't want me to look overweight in photos. He recommended 28 pounds. He claimed the wedding was 9 months away, so I had time to start immediately. He stated he studied diets and gym memberships for me. I sat there trying to comprehend what occurred. I asked him to repeat. He repeated it as if it were the most reasonable request. I was told he wanted me to appear good. He stated decreasing weight would help me glow on my wedding day as brides should. Just because he loved me and wanted the best for us, he stated. Mason was also asked about losing weight. He chuckled. He laughed like I joked. Different, he said. He stated grooms didn't have to bother about images like brides. He said everyone would look at me regardless, so I should try. Because tuxedos flatter all body shapes, he believed he would look good in one. I noted his 315 pounds. I said I weighed 145. By any measure, I wasn't the one who needed to lose weight in our relationship. A defensive Mason. It seemed I was missing the point. Not for health, he said. It was aesthetic. He said brides should look a certain way, and I wasn't. He stated his mother concurred. He mentioned his mother thought I could tone up before the wedding. Asking when he discussed my body with his mother. He stated they discussed it 10 days ago while looking at my old images. He stated his mother noticed I had gained a few pounds since we started dating, and felt the wedding would motivate me to get back in shape. I hadn't gained weight. I weighed the same when we met. I ran 4 miles every morning. I practiced yoga 3 times a week. Nothing had changed about my body but Mason and his mother's perception. I didn't shout. No tears. I stared at this man I had committed to marry and realized I didn't know him. Mason got another question. I inquired if he would marry me if I didn't lose weight. He paused. I learned everything from that hesitation. He promised to marry me but may be disappointed. He wanted to be proud of his bride. He hoped I wouldn't be selfish. My engagement ring was removed and placed on the table between us. Mason glanced at it in confusion. He inquired about my activities. I'm losing weight. He appeared bewildered. Asking how much. I mentioned 195 pounds. He realized I was talking about him after a few seconds. He stared at that ring like it was new. The diamond reflected kitchen light on the table, creating miniature rainbows. I watched his face change from uncertainty to panic as he processed what I said. He opened his mouth twice before speaking. I'd never heard him speak with such a tight, biting voice, up half an octave. He inquired whether I was serious. Right now. I told him I had never been more serious about anything on earth. I needed him to leave our apartment tonight so I could think straight without him attempting to get me to lose 28 pounds. He reclined so hard that his chair scraped the floor. He claimed his name was on the lease beside mine. He said this was his home and he wouldn't leave. I rose up and took my handbag off the counter. The microwave bowl held my keys as usual. I held them and found them heavier than usual. Mason called after me as I approached the door, asking where I was going. I ignored him. I opened the door, walked down the hallway and got to my car. Driving to Brooks' place took 25 minutes but felt like hours. Every light felt endless. My steering wheel hands shook. Mason stated the camera added 8 pounds and he wanted to be proud of his bride, so I repeated that. The lyrics stuck in my head like a tune. I arrived at Brooks' parking lot around 9 p.m. I sat in my car for a minute before moving. Because I wanted exercise, I took the stairs instead of the lift to her fourth-floor flat. She opened the door in pajamas and an old college sweater when I knocked. She looked at my face and left without saying anything. She dragged me inside and shut the door. Her apartment smelled like the farmer's market vanilla candles she always bought. She led me to the couch and left for the kitchen. I heard her filling the kettle and starting the stove. She returned with 2 mugs and a box of tea bags and sat next to me. I couldn't stop talking once I started. I told her Mason's comments regarding my weight, photos, and his mother's support. When I asked if he'd marry me, I told her about his uncertainty. I advised her to remove the ring. Not once did Brooke interrupt. She listened and refilled my tea mug. My phone buzzed on the coffee table and my neck was stiff the next morning on Brooke's couch. The screen showed 21 Mason missed calls. I scrolled through 12 apology to accusation texts. One message said I overreacted to a simple request. Another claimed he was boosting my performance. A third said his mother wanted our best. My fists were against my eyes as the phone lay face down on the table. Returning from her bedroom in jammies, Brooke requested coffee. Despite not drinking coffee, I agreed. She gave me a cup with "Nevertheless" in white letters, printed in French. I held the warm coffee and studied my phone like it would explode. Mason sent 4 more texts while I watched. The first said to talk like adults. The second called me childish. His mother was upset, the third said. I put my phone away and drank coffee. We had scrambled eggs and toast for breakfast at Brooke's kitchen table. I had no idea what to do when she asked. She made a napkin list with a junk drawer pen. Typed bank account first, then landlord and lawyer, possibly after assessing your needs. She double underlined the last. She advised me to open a bank account before Mason mishandled our money. She suggested discussing the lease with the landlord. She advised me to decide what I wanted before Mason's explanations and apologies exhausted me. I felt my chest shift as I viewed her list. I realized I had shrunk completely to please Mason and his mother. Let him pick the venue, caterer, musician, and colors. I laughed at bad jokes. Seeing his conviction, I agreed to things I didn't want. I stopped shrinking. After I assured Brooke I was done shrinking, she squeezed my hand across the table. Returning to flat at 11:30 a.m. moment I knew Mason would work. I was nervous turning my key even though his car wasn't in the parking lot. I left the unit unchanged. Dinner dishes remained in the sink. My engagement ring was on the kitchen table when I left. I pondered the ring. Sunlight shrank the diamond. How could I find it lovely? The bedroom closet held 3 suitcases, which I removed. I packed 9 or 14 days of clothes first. Then I brought my laptop, running shoes and bedside family photos. I took my yoga mat and favorite coffee mug from the corner and kitchen cabinet. Taken my bedtime books and college journal. I looked around the flat again and realized how little was mine. Mason's old furniture. His mother picked the wall art. Only 3 suitcases held my belongings. The ring on the table was ignored as I buttoned the zipper and left. Mason's car entered the parking lot as I filled the second bag. He parked next to me and left before I closed my trunk. I said I was getting things when he asked. He suggested adult discussion. I said we could talk after I processed his request. He came and said I was unreasonable. After thinking about it all night, he realized he may have said things wrong but made a good point. He advised brides to look their best. He promised to help me succeed. Never wanted to lose 28 pounds, I told him. I told him I only wanted to think away. He blamed thinking. He said I overthought a simple conversation and made it theatrical. The explanation would help me understand his love, he said. Entering my car, I closed the trunk. Mason spoke through my locked parking lot window. Not hearing the words, I could see his mouth moving. I started the car and left my parking spot while he stood there. Harper, my sister, called me that afternoon, and I told her everything. She was quiet after I spoke. She promised to arrive at Brooke's apartment in 3.5 hours by car. I told her not to, but she insisted. Her extended cab pickup arrived 3.5 hours later. Her hug was too intense to breathe. She then asked if I still had the apartment key, which I did, and said great because we were going to get the rest of my stuff. Mason's car was gone again when we took her truck to the apartment. Harper didn't probe or ask. Recently, she packed boxes. She stole my winter clothes and kitchen supplies from the closet and cabinets. She packed my desk, bookshelves, and 4-year-old yard sale lamp. She whispered about men who think women exist to look nice in photos. She said nerve, mother, and 315 pounds can go to hell. I felt less weird leaving because of her outrage. I thought I wasn't overreacting. I waited at the busy bank on Wednesday morning. The woman behind the counter asked how she could help, and I said I needed a new bank account. My information was requested from her computer forms. She didn't ask why I opened a new account or where the money came from. She handled paperwork easily. I got 55% of our savings in my new account. The screen number was smaller than I wanted but larger than I feared. Signing the documents was scary but right. I received my temporary checks and debit card over the counter from the agent. I left the bank feeling accomplished. That felt like independence, but I didn't know what. Mason dropped by Brooke's apartment Wednesday night without warning. He knocked while I ate leftover Chinese on her couch. Brooke called me by name through the peephole. My head shook as she nodded. She opened the chain-locked door. Mason requested a private gap conversation. Brooke said I would call him when I was ready. So respect my space. Mason volume increased. He called this stupid and said my friends manipulated me. He said Brooke was turning me against him. Brooke told him to leave because that didn't work. Mason mumbled something else I couldn't hear. A powerful kick-like thud followed. Brooke locked the door and went to the couch. He allegedly marked her door frame with a kick. We heard his footsteps slow as he left. I visited the landlord in her first-floor office Thursday afternoon. A woman in her early 60s wore chained reading glasses. She asked what happened after checking my lease on her computer. I told him my fiancé and I broke up and one had to leave. She nodded like she'd heard the tale 100 times. My lease had 5 months left, but she apologized. She said Mason and I were legally responsible for rent until then. She suggested finding someone to take over 60% of the lease if we wanted to leave early. New tenants need her approval, but she'll work with us. I thanked her and went upstairs with purpose. Looking for someone to take over my lease. I had something to focus on instead of feeling stuck between my old and new lives. I tried being normal at work on Monday. I received coffee at my desk from Grant at 9:30 a.m. and asked about lunch. No seemed odd, so I said yes. We sat by the window at the sandwich shop 3 blocks from the office. Grant asked about wedding preparations and I felt sick. He saw Mason and me at the December corporate Christmas party. Mason kept me all night and announced his marriage. A sandwich helped me pause before responding. Grant was told wedding stress was manageable. Even I thought my voice was fake. Grant nodded, mentioning a project due next week. I liked his non-information request. Walking back to work, I realized how many co-workers knew Mason and asked questions I couldn't answer. Phone buzzed Wednesday afternoon meeting. Mason texted me that his mother wanted to discuss this misunderstanding. He suggested she refocus us. I stared at the message until someone asked about the quarterly report, then pretended to listen. Rereading the text in the bathroom after the meeting. I knew who advised weight loss. That wasn't Mason's plan. My body was discussed with his mother for months. Before reconsidering, I blocked her number. I didn't need her explanations or manipulation. Mason texted 4 more times asking why I wasn't answering his mother. I focused on work with my phone face down on my desk. Wedding planner contacted Wednesday morning. She asked about final guest counts in a confident tone. Closed my office door before telling her we were canceling. She lost her voice's joy. This happened after she admitted understanding. We would lose most of our deposits, she said. We exceeded 75 days for a full refund from the venue. Always over half the caterer kept. The band kept deposit. Only the photographer would refund us minus a processing fee. While she spoke, I mentally calculated quickly. More than $9,500 was lost. I begged her to cancel everything. She apologized and emailed the documents. After hanging up, I sat at my desk sick about the money but knowing it was worth it. The $9,500 cost to end a conditional acceptance marriage seemed fair. Thursday night, Brooke suggested I see a professional. She said friends were fine, but I needed real help processing. She had already scheduled sessions with Claire Bennett, a therapist who accepted my insurance the following week. I booked the appointment while Brooke was on the phone to avoid convincing myself otherwise. The following Wednesday's session started at 3:30. Her downtown office had a lavender-scented waiting room. She was younger than expected and had knotted brown hair. She asked me about my ideal marriage. I mentioned our wedding, house, and potential children. Claire listened uninterrupted. I was asked how Mason would affect my daily life. When I spoke, I realized I'd imagined trying to meet changing standards to stay insecure. My marriage would have been spent worrying about my weight, beauty, and worth. Claire wrote something in her notepad and asked how I felt. I regretted almost choosing that life. I got voicemail Friday afternoon. Mason texted me his mother's number. In the work parking lot, I listened in my car. Her voice was vehement. She called me selfish and immature for rejecting a good man over advice. He deserved better than someone who couldn't take criticism, she said. She said I erred greatly. She sounded almost sweet when discussing my relationship comfort. She warned Mason months ago that I'd let myself go after the wedding if I wasn't careful. She said she was just preventing it. The message lasted 2:30. It took 2 listens to understand how someone could think this way. Mason asked me to lose 28 pounds after months of her criticizing me, calling me comfortable and predicting I'd gain weight. I deleted the message and got mad. I told Brooke about the voicemail over coffee Saturday morning. In anger, she said things about Mason's mother that made me laugh for days. She disclosed what a mutual friend told her. Mason claimed I left him without warning over a minor wedding planning dispute. His version made me sound unstable. As the victim, he pretended to be surprised. My face heated up. Brooke asked me to be honest. I agreed immediately. More thought followed. Claire suggested I focus on my healing rather than managing others' stories in our session. I avoided Masonic arguments. Even though Brooke thought that was smart, she would tell anyone who asked that Mason lied. Sunday afternoon, Brooke called with good news. Her boyfriend knew a renter. He needed a place to take over my half of the lease 6 weeks later. The landlord was notified by phone. She mentioned checking the new tenant's credit, but it sounded good. I texted Mason that I found a tenant for my half of the lease. Calls were made immediately. Speaking loudly and furiously. He said I was leaving home. I abandoned us, he said. He said I wasn't trying to bargain. I patiently awaited his silence. When he made my dress size a love condition, I told him he left us. Not fair, he said. I said fair and hung up. Despite shaking hands, I felt good about defending myself. Because I couldn't sleep Monday night, I looked through old laptop photos. Mason and I dated 5 years ago when I found these photos. The work conference where we met, our 4th date at a baseball game, and the beach weekend 7 months later all had one. I looked the same. Same face, body, and size. I hadn't gained weight, making his request insulting. He didn't react to change. He was preemptively controlling me to prevent me from falling short of his standards. He may have always had these thoughts and waited until we were engaged to say them. Regardless, it proved my choice was right. After closing my laptop, I slept in bed. Mason texted Wednesday to meet for coffee to divide our things. A coffee shop near my office was my Thursday afternoon meeting spot. He was sitting at a back table when I arrived. After seeing me, he stood up to hug me, but I sat down quickly. He sat down and began talking immediately. He said he didn't mean it my way. He said he was nervous about the photos because weddings were expensive and he wanted perfection. We paid $3,400 for the photographer, so he wanted good photos. Never meant to hurt me, he said. He said I overreacted. He spoke non-stop for 20 minutes. I gazed at him silently. He paused and asked if I would respond. I told Mason asking your partner to lose weight for photos wasn't nervous. Malice disguised as concern. I said his inability to comprehend that disqualified us from marriage. His face reddened. Other customers looked over at his loud voice. He wondered why I was punishing him for caring about our wedding. He said he wanted to make us special. I was unreasonable and stubborn, he said. I got up while he was talking. After leaving the coffee shop, I drove away. He sent me texts, but I didn't read them. I stopped arguing with someone who didn't understand. A conference organizer message arrived in my work email Monday morning. The annual professional development conference was 6 weeks away. Mason's name appeared 4 rows below mine in the attendee list. My stomach twisted. I signed up for this conference 8 months ago when we were still together planning our future. I wanted to cancel my registration after thinking about staying in the same hotel for 4 days. I started a new email to request reassignment but stopped halfway through. Mason took 5 years of my life and shaped every decision. He would not steal my career opportunities. I deleted my message and wrote another. Mason and I worked in related departments, so I asked the organizer if we could be in different workshop tracks to benefit our company. Within an hour, the organizer said she would minimize overlap. I was relieved and proud that I stood up for myself instead of hiding. I saw Claire that afternoon for therapy. I explained the conference situation when she asked how I was handling the separation. I then mentioned my concern. My thoughts kept returning to the wedding planning and Mason's every decision. Claire asked me what I chose for the wedding. Sitting there, I tried to remember. The architecture drew him to the venue. The caterer was his choice because he wanted a specific menu. He chose the band after hearing them at his cousin's wedding. He chose navy and gold because they were his college colors. Family and coworkers dominated the guest list. His mother advised me on what would photograph well when I chose my dress. Claire asked my wedding wishes. I realized I was clueless. I never considered it because Mason was so excited about everything that I followed his plans. Claire noted the pattern. He said, "Mason made decisions for us without actually consulting me, and I accepted it because I thought that was what compromise looked like." Compromising meant both parties contributed. Mason decided and I agreed because disagreeing felt difficult. I left therapy feeling like someone had turned on a light in a room I had been sitting in for 5 years. I could finally see all the furniture I had been tripping over in the dark. Harper called that night to say she found a micro one-bedroom apartment available immediately. The kitchen was a hot plate and a mini fridge, and the bathroom was so small you could sit on the toilet and wash your hands in the sink. The rent was $250 more than my half of the current apartment, but it was available now and it was mine alone, so I told Harper I would take it. She picked me up Saturday morning with her truck and we loaded my clothes, books, kitchen supplies and the small desk I brought into the relationship. Since the building had no elevator, Harper helped me carry everything up 4 flights of stairs. We spent the afternoon setting up my new space. I put my bed against the wall and my desk under the window and hung my clothes in the barely sized closet. Harper and I went to Home Goods to buy curtains. I stood in the curtain aisle looking at beige, gray, white and navy options. I saw bright yellow curtains with a sunshine pattern that Mason would have hated and his mother would have said were too loud. I bought them immediately. Harper helped me hang them, and the whole apartment looked different. Brighter. Happier. Mine. I looked around at this small expensive space that I had chosen without considering anyone else's opinion and felt free for the first time in years. My name was called while I was reading labels in the pasta aisle at the grocery store near my new apartment on Sunday afternoon. Nolan, Mason's best man, stopped his cart next to mine and asked how I was doing. I said I was fine and tried to move past him, but he stepped in. He said Mason was really torn up about the breakup and was not eating or sleeping and spent most of his time sitting around looking miserable. He suggested I give Mason another chance because everyone makes mistakes and Mason loved me. I looked at Nolan and wondered what Mason had told him about why we broke up. Nolan looked uncomfortable and said Mason mentioned wedding planning disagreements. I told Nolan that Mason demanded I lose 28 pounds so I wouldn't look heavy in our wedding photos. He said he didn't know that. I said Mason should be torn up about what he said to me, not about facing consequences. Nolan was quiet for a moment, then he said he was sorry and he didn't realize that. He said he would have reacted the same way I did if someone told him to lose weight for photos. I appreciated his honesty. I told him I needed to finish shopping and he moved his cart out of my way. I met Brooke for coffee Wednesday morning before work. She looked at me with an unreadable expression and said she heard something from another friend and wanted to tell me. No one in their friend group knew why Mason's previous girlfriend left because she stopped showing up to events and Mason said they grew apart. Brooke always thought it was weird how quickly that relationship ended, so she wondered if Mason did something similar. After searching through Mason's old photos, I found Lauren, his ex on social media, who lived 3 towns over. I looked at her profile for a long time, deciding whether to contact her. It felt strange to contact someone I didn't know to ask about her relationship history, but I wanted to know if Mason had a pattern of this behavior or if I was special in bringing it out. I introduced myself and said I was engaged to Mason until recently. I asked if she would be willing to talk about their relationship and hit send before I could change my mind. Lauren responded the next day. We agreed to have lunch Saturday at a restaurant halfway between our towns. I arrived first and sat at a window table. Lauren arrived 12 minutes later and I recognized her from her photos. She sat across from me and we ordered food. Then she asked what happened with Mason. I told her about the weight loss demand, his mother's involvement, and how he laughed when I asked if he planned to lose weight. Lauren nodded like none of this surprised her. She said Mason behaved similarly with her. At first he was wonderful and supportive, then he started making comments. He said her job was not prestigious enough and she should look for something. He said her friends were holding her back and criticized how much time she spent with her family. He then commented on her appearance, saying she should wear more makeup, dress more casually, and lose a few pounds and tone up. He always wanted her to be the best version of herself. Lauren said she tried for 7 months to change her hair, buy new clothes and join a gym, but he always found something else to improve. She left when she realized the point was not improvement. The point was control. I drove home from lunch with Lauren feeling validated and sad. Her story proved I wasn't crazy or oversensitive. Mason had done this before, criticizing women and passing it off as care. I felt sad that I wasted 5 years on someone whose behavior was so predictable. If I had known about Lauren earlier, Maybe I would have seen the signs sooner and left before we got engaged, planned a wedding, and built a life together that I now had to take apart. I called Sienna from my car and told her about Lauren. She listened and then changed my perspective. She said recognizing the pattern now saved me from wasting more years. Some people stayed in relationships like this for decades because they never got confirmation that the problem was real. I had proof that leaving was the right choice, which was worth celebrating even though it hurt. 1 month later I checked into the hotel Thursday afternoon and saw Mason across the lobby talking to an accountant. My stomach dropped, even though I knew he would be there. I had prepared for this moment, but seeing him made it too real. I headed for the elevator to avoid him, but Grant, who worked in my department and we had met at company events, asked if I wanted coffee before the first session. I agreed because being with someone was better than being alone. Grant ordered 2 lattes at the hotel coffee shop and didn't mention Mason, or ask about my personal life. He just talked about work projects and conference sessions. His casual kindness made me feel less alone. I realized I had been so focused on Mason, the wedding, and the breakup that I forgot I had other people who cared about me. The first day of sessions went well because the organizer kept her promise to separate Mason and me. I didn't see him again until the networking break Friday afternoon, when I saw Mason walking toward me. Grant blocked his path before he reached me. I watched Mason explain a work project to Grant, who was his colleague, and I was grateful. Grant kept Mason busy for 15 minutes talking about budget reports and timeline adjustments. After their conversation, I moved to another part of the room and found Grant near the refreshment table. I thanked him and he shrugged, saying, "Everyone deserved colleagues who had their back." I realized I had more support than I thought. After the conference Sunday night I checked my mail and found a travel company envelope with a payment notice for Mason's honeymoon package, which was scheduled for 10 weeks. I was so focused on what I lost when I left Mason that I didn't notice what I still had. The package was non-refundable and the entire $6,800 cost was due in 45 days. I called Mason immediately and he answered on the 3rd ring. I asked him why he never canceled the honeymoon and he said he forgot about it with everything else going on. I told him he needed to handle this. Mason said we should both pay half since we both benefited from booking it originally. I told him I wasn't paying for a honeymoon that wouldn't happen because of his behavior. He said I was being unreasonable. I hung up and called the travel company. The representative said Mason could make changes or cancellations. She said they would send the account to collections if payment was not received by the due date. I texted Mason the deadline and told him to handle it, but he did not respond. I scheduled a lawyer appointment the next week to fix Mason's financial mess. My early 60s lawyer listened as I explained the honeymoon, wedding deposits, and security deposit from our old apartment that Mason still owed me half of. She looked at our old lease, the honeymoon booking email trail, and screenshots of Mason's texts claiming I owed him for wedding cancellations for 20 minutes before looking up. She suggested writing a clear division of debts to offset what Mason claimed I owed against what he actually owed me. The security deposit was $1,350 and Mason never paid me back his half when we moved. That covered most of what he said I owed for the venue deposit. She typed a document right there listing every shared expense and who was responsible. Following her work, Mason owed me $450 more than I owed him, so the wedding venue was split evenly since we both signed that contract. The other deposits were divided similarly by who signed what paperwork. I paid her fee and left with copies of everything in a folder. Claire noticed something in my communication about wedding planning in our next therapy session. Claire asked me what I wanted for the wedding, and I couldn't think of a single detail. She also asked if I was grateful that Mason wanted to marry me. Sienna asked what I meant by someone like him. I said Mason was confident, funny and successful, and I sometimes wondered why he picked me. Claire pointed out that I was also confident, funny and successful. She asked how it felt different. I realized I had been performing gratitude for being chosen. Mason made me feel like I should be thankful someone wanted to marry me, so I didn't advocate for what I wanted for fear of appearing difficult or ungrateful. Claire asked if I deserved wedding opinions. I replied, of course. Hearing myself say it made me realize I hadn't acted like I believed it. She said this pattern probably appeared in other areas of our relationship. I thought about all the times I agreed to things I didn't want or stayed quiet when Mason made decisions without asking. The wedding was the biggest example of how I shrank to please him. That week, I ran 5 and 6 miles because 4 felt easy and signed up for unlimited monthly classes at an advanced yoga studio across town. The classes were harder than I was used to, and I liked shaking my muscles and breathing hard and knowing I was getting stronger. Running every mile felt like shaking off Mason's shame. He wanted me to change my body to meet his standards, but I was changing my body for myself. I told the yoga studio instructor I was training to feel like myself again, and she smiled like she understood. After class, I saw someone taking up space without apologizing in the mirror. I didn't tell many people why Mason and I broke up, but Brooke told her boyfriend, who told someone else, and the story spread. 4 mutual friends stopped responding to my texts and unfollowed me on social media. I assumed they were siding with Mason, didn't believe me, or thought I was overreacting to his request. Others said they always thought his treatment was off. A book club member wrote a long message saying she was glad I got away from Mason because he often spoke over me in groups. A gym friend said Mason made comments about other women's bodies when I wasn't around, which always made him uncomfortable. 3 weeks later I met 4 college friends for coffee downtown. I trusted them to be honest, so we ordered drinks and sat at a corner table. I asked if Mason had ever said anything weird about my appearance. Mason made jokes about my appearance, saying I should try a new hairstyle or ask if I was really going to eat dessert or mention that certain colors were not flattering on me. She said, they all laughed uncomfortably at the time because they did not know what else to do. Another friend said, Mason once commented that I was lucky to have him because most guys his age wanted someone younger and thinner. She almost said something but was afraid of causing. The third friend said she considered pulling me aside several times but didn't know how to bring it up without sounding interfering. I sat there realizing the red flags were obvious to others even though I tried to hide them. They apologized for not saying anything sooner. Mason wrote me a long email 4 days after that coffee meeting with the subject line, "We need to talk about everything he did right in our relationship and how I was throwing it away over one mistake." He listed all the nice things he did for me over 5 years. He remembered driving 7 hours to pick me up when my car broke down, the surprise birthday party he threw for me 3 years ago, every gift he bought, every vacation we took, and every time he supported me through something difficult. He said he made one comment about wanting me to look my best for our wedding and I was using it to destroy everything we built together. He said I was unfair, unreasonable and selfish, and that if I loved him, I would forgive this one mistake and return to him. I read the email 3 times, wrote a response explaining why his request was a symptom of how he saw me, deleted it, and wrote a different response about our relationship's cycle of control. After deleting that, I wrote a third version with 2 sentences saying I was not coming back and he needed to respect my decision. I was about to send it when I called Claire, who asked me to read her the email. She was quiet and said his email was manipulation to make me doubt my decision. A letter arrived at my new apartment 9 days later. She said he was rewriting history to make himself the victim and that silence was the clearest boundary I could set. I thanked her and deleted all 3 drafts without sending them. The envelope's handwriting was unfamiliar, but inside were 3 pages of stationery with flowers. Marlene wrote that I was breaking her son's heart and ruining his life, saying Mason was a good man who deserved a wife who appreciated him. Women should be grateful for male attention and willing to maintain themselves to keep it, she said. Her generation understood that marriage required compromise and sacrifice, but my generation was too selfish to make relationships work. She said I would regret this decision when I was older and alone and realized I had wasted my chance at a family. She said Mason told her I refused to discuss his concerns about the wedding photos, proving I did not love him. I read 2 pages before stopping because it revealed more about her values. I didn't care what she thought of me, my choices, or my generation, so I threw the letter away without finishing it. The following month, a work friend got married, and I almost didn't go because I was afraid it would hurt to watch someone else get married when my own wedding was in 10 weeks. After RSVPing yes and buying a gift, I put on a dress and drove to the garden ceremony. The bride looked radiant and happy and her groom looked at her like she was perfect. He cried when she walked down the aisle. During the vows he said he loved every part of her and could not wait to spend his life making her as happy as she made him. I was glad not to marry Mason, and confident I made the right choice. At the reception, I danced with other guests, ate cake, and celebrated love that looked like love should. I felt fine driving home that night. Grant invited me to lunch the next week. We talked outside at a sandwich shop near the office in the cold about his ex who constantly criticized him, telling him to dress better, work out more and be more social. After that relationship he took 3 years to rebuild his confidence and still heard her say he wasn't good enough. Sharing our experiences made me feel less alone. Grant said the hardest part was realizing how much he had changed to please her. I assured him I understood that feeling as we finished our sandwiches and returned to work. I was glad to know someone else understood. 7 months after the breakup, Mason arrived at my apartment building as I returned from a run. He said he had been in therapy and understood what he did wrong. He said his therapist helped him see how his weight comments were harmful and controlling. He asked if we could try again, promising he had changed and would never make me feel that way again. I wanted familiarity and an apology, but I also wanted to believe people could change. Missed our good times, and was tired of being alone. I looked at him standing there and remembered everything. How he laughed when I asked if he would lose weight, his mother's letter about maintaining myself, and 5 years of shrinking to fit what he wanted. I told Mason I appreciated that he was working on himself, but I wasn't interested in getting back together. He looked at me like I spoke a different language and said I was unfair by not giving him a chance to prove he was different. His voice got louder. He said he went to therapy for me and I owed him a chance. His anger showed he had not changed. Mason tried to hug me goodbye, but I stepped back. The hurt on his face almost made me feel guilty, but then I remembered I wasn't responsible for his emotions anymore. He left without a word. I closed the door and sat on my floor, shaking my hands and body, but my mind was clear. I texted Claire that I held my boundary and it felt terrible and right at the same time. She replied with a proud face emoji and said that was growth. 7 months after the breakup, the lawyer completed the final paperwork to divide our shared assets. He spread the documents across his desk and showed me where to sign. Everything was itemized and fair. The savings account was split in half. The furniture we bought together was divided by who kept what. The security deposit from our old apartment calculated and allocated. I signed my name on every page, feeling like closing a door. I left that office financially independent from Mason, with less money than if we stayed together. Our combined incomes had made life easier, but I had more peace than I had in years. The trade was worth it. I drove home and transferred half of the savings into my personal account. Seeing that number in my balance made me feel like I was building my own life. 1 month later, my manager called me into her office and told me the directors liked my conference work. I took the new job immediately because the raise was big enough to buy a better apartment or start saving for things I wanted. That night, Brooke and Harper and I celebrated at our favorite restaurant with appetizers, dessert and wine. Brooke kept saying she knew I would get it. Harper raised her glass and said she was proud of me. Grant stopped by my desk the next morning to congratulate me and say he told management about my conference work. Several directors asked him about me. I thanked him for believing in me and realized I was building a professional reputation unrelated to any relationship. My career and success were mine, and nobody could take them away. I booked a solo vacation with some of the wedding money. Mason always wanted to go places together, and his idea of vacation involved tours, schedules, and restaurant reservations made weeks in advance. I booked a cabin near Rocky Mountain National Park with no plan, except to do what felt right each day. The first morning, I made coffee and sat on the porch watching the sun rise over the mountains. Nobody asked me what I wanted to do or suggested activities. I hiked a trail I found on a map at the visitor center for 5 hours, stopping to take photos or breathe. Every decision was mine: where I ate breakfast, how I spent my afternoons, and when I went to bed. Hiking different trails each day, reading 4 books, and eating at restaurants without worrying about others' preferences felt like finally breathing fully after years of holding my breath. I returned from vacation feeling lighter, more myself, and I realized I hadn't checked Mason's social media in over 9 days. I sat by a fire outside my cabin on the last night and felt settled like I hadn't in 5 years. I opened the app out of curiosity and saw he hadn't looked at my profile in weeks. His mental space had shrunk to almost nothing as I filled it with my own hobbies, friendships, and career goals. I joined a downtown coffee shop book club and took a pottery class on Tuesday nights. I planned outings with coworkers and built a life that reflected who I was instead of who others wanted me to be. Claire and I discussed ending therapy at our next session because she said I was doing so much better and I could see it too. I left Mason 7 months ago and wondered if I made the right choice. Now I know I did. Claire said I learned to set boundaries and trust my instincts, which will help me in every relationship. I wanted to see her less often, so we agreed on monthly sessions instead of weekly. In early spring I started casually dating again. Just coffee dates and park walks, and noticed changes in my behavior immediately. I stated my preferences clearly. I ended dates early without apologizing or explaining when something felt off. I went on a date with a man who spent the whole time talking about his ex-girlfriend. Harper called me one Saturday morning and asked if we could meet for breakfast. I finished my coffee and told him I didn't think we were a good match. He seemed surprised, but I believed in my instincts. We had good omelets at a place near her apartment. She told me she was proud of how I handled everything with Mason, and that watching me leave a bad situation gave her courage to set better boundaries in her own life. Her boss had been taking advantage of her for months, asking her to work late without extra pay, answering emails on weekends, and making her feel guilty when she said no. Harper told him she would no longer be available outside her scheduled hours. Her boss was upset, but he accepted it. She said, seeing me choose myself helped her realize she could do the same. That said something. 10 months after the breakup, I ran a half marathon after 14 weeks of training, 4 weekday runs and 2 Sunday longer runs. I pushed myself each week, getting stronger and clearer. Race day was cold and sunny and hundreds of runners lined up. The gun went off and we started moving. The first few miles felt easy. My legs were fresh and my breathing was steady. Around mile 8 my legs started to hurt, but I kept going. Mile 11 was hard. My body wanted to stop, but I told myself I could do 2 more miles. I finished at 13.5 miles and someone put a medal around my neck. My legs were shaking. My lungs were burning. I felt amazing. Crossing that finish line showed how far I had come. I carried myself 13.5 miles on strength I built for myself, not to impress others or look good in photos. I was proud of what I accomplished. 3 weeks after the half marathon, Grant invited me to a barbecue at his apartment building. He said some friends were getting together and I should come meet them. I brought a bottle of wine and was nervous walking up to his apartment building. Grant opened the door and introduced me to 7 people sitting around his living room. They were warm immediately and asked about my running, job and hobbies. Nobody commented on how I looked or what I ate when we went to the patio for burgers. One woman mentioned training for a triathlon and asked if I wanted to join her running group. While eating potato salad and drinking beer, a guy told stories about his terrible dating experiences that made everyone laugh. I realized this was what normal felt like. People who didn't think bodies were topics for public discussion and cared about what you did and thought instead of how you looked. I went home that night lighter. 1 month later, Lauren texted me to see how I was doing. I stared at her name on my phone for a minute before responding. We agreed to meet for coffee on Saturday morning. I arrived early and ordered a latte. Lauren arrived looking healthy and happy. We hugged and sat down, and she asked about my life since the breakup. I told her about therapy, the promotion, and the half marathon. She nodded and said she was proud of me for leaving. She told me about her 7-month therapy after Mason. She joined a book club and started painting again. She learned to recognize red flags early. Then she met someone new. Someone who never suggested she change anything about herself and loved her exactly as she was. She showed me photos of her engagement ring. Her face lit up when she talked about her partner. In early summer I moved into a larger 1-bedroom apartment because the promotion salary allowed me to afford more space and a better neighborhood. I spent 14 days decorating it the way I wanted, including buying a bright blue couch because I loved the color. I chose furniture to create a reading nook by the window and hung art that made me smile without worrying if guests would like it. The apartment was mine alone, so I didn't have to worry about Mason or his mother's opinions. I was proud of my yellow curtains and blue couch when I came home from work 11 months after the breakup. Mason sent a text saying he was dating someone new, which made my stomach drop. I read it twice and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a mild sense of closure. I typed a polite response wishing him well and preferring to keep our interactions professional. I deleted his number from my phone because we were done. I was building something new. Brooke's birthday party was on a warm June Saturday. She rented a rooftop downtown and invited 45 people. I wore a dress I bought because I loved it. Grant was talking to Harper, and some of my running group stood by the bar. I grabbed a drink, joined conversations, laughed at jokes, and made plans for dinner next week. Halfway through the party, I realized something. I was happy with my life. Not just okay or healing, but happy with what I was building. Brooke asked what was funny because I was smiling so much. I told her I was just happy. She hugged me and said she could tell. Claire asked me what I learned from this experience at our last regular session in July. I thought about it for a minute and told her that love should not require me to change my body or voice. The right person would celebrate who I am instead of criticizing who I am not. I learned that I am worth that kind of love, to trust my instincts when something feels wrong, and that leaving a bad situation takes courage, but staying in one takes even more. Claire smiled and said I had done important work. She said I could call her if I needed support, but she thought I could handle whatever came next. I left her office feeling ready. I scrolled through my phone's photos of Mason and me at restaurants, parks and parties from August. I expected to feel sad, but I felt grateful. Grateful I discovered his conditional love before we got married. Grateful I had the courage to leave when I saw who he was. Grateful for the 14 months of growth that taught me to value myself. Those 5 years were not wasted. They taught me what I didn't want, and the difference between someone who loves you and someone who loves controlling you. I closed the photo app and deleted the album. At a September dinner party, my running group friend invited me to her house for food and games. When I arrived, I saw a stranger helping in the kitchen. My friend introduced us and he asked about my running, seeming genuinely interested in my half-marathon training. He talked about his job, family and plans to hike the Appalachian Trail for 2 hours without mentioning my appearance. It felt easy and equal, which I had forgotten was possible. After the party he asked for my number. I gave it to him, curious about the outcome. 4 days later, he texted me to dinner. I stared at the message, excited and nervous, but not afraid. I knew red flags now and trusted myself to walk away. That self-trust was the best thing I got from leaving Mason. I said yes and suggested a restaurant. We made plans for Friday night. I put my phone down and smiled. This felt different and right. 14 months after taking off my engagement ring, I was training for a full marathon. I ran 4 times a week and did strength training 3 times a week. My body was strong and my mind was clear. I booked a trip to Iceland in October to see the northern lights and hike through lava fields. Work was going well. I got another small promotion and more responsibility. I was building a life where I took up space without apologizing and where my worth wasn't tied to how I looked in others' photos. I remembered the night Mason asked me to lose weight and how small he tried to make me feel. I considered taking off that ring and choosing myself. I was prouder than ever of who I was becoming. My mill said my 8-year-old didn't belong and banned us from the wedding. Then acted shocked. When I didn't stay quiet. My mother-in-law forbade my 8-year-old and I from attending my husband's sister's wedding, which had over 25 children and 112 guests. Her child doesn't belong with us, she remarked nonchalantly. I didn't yell. I took one silent step. They examined the checkbook and began yelling when the wedding payment was due. I was standing in my kitchen with a glittering barrette in my palm and pancake batter on my wrist when I heard Marjorie say it. Because Aunt Madeline loves purple, Chloe had chosen it the previous evening. It was glittery and purple, like a crown. She had placed it on the table as a pledge. At 8, she was old enough to give a damn. Young enough to still think that adults have good intentions. After clipping it into her hair, I assured myself that everything would be all right. The problem with being fine is that usually, it's a costume. Until someone takes it off in public, you wear it. Logan arrived downstairs looking like a man on his way to disaster. Carrying a bag of clothes. A bag of clothes for emergencies. Yes. We had 9 years of marriage. For 9 years, I had to translate Logan's family's jokes into reality and deal with school drop-offs, dentist reminders, and PTA emails. Tiny, precise cuts, tiny tests, and tiny prods. Marjorie never let forth a cry. She didn't have to. Marjorie had the ability to make a compliment destroy your day. She would smile as if she had just found a new species and exclaim, "Oh, Hannah. I adore your efforts." We lived in a peaceful suburb outside of Chicago. The kind where Target was 8 minutes away and the homeowners association thought that the length of the grass was morally wrong. Our life appeared normal from the street. A house with seasonal wreaths and Amazon shipments on the doorstep, a husband, and a child. Logan's family, however, continued to treat me like a temporary worker inside the house. Not quite one of them, but useful and interchangeable. Logan avoided looking at me as he filled his travel mug with coffee. "I must leave," he said. "My mother is in the hospital." I gave a blink. "Marjorie, what? What took place?" He adjusted his weight as if the floor were shaky. "I'm not sure. Madeline gave a call. It's not good." My hands instinctively reached for my phone. "All right, let's head out. I'll give the school a call. Take Chloe." "No. Too quickly. Too keen." "No. Hannah. Hospitals are germs, Chloe has school, and you'll just get in the way." I finished. After waiting all morning for me to ask the incorrect question, Logan finally turned to face me, his annoyance obviously evident. "Please let me take care of it, Hannah. Keep me out of the room until it was too late to protest, and handle it the way he did everything." With her eyes half awake and her hair sticking up, Chloe padded into the kitchen wearing unicorn pajamas. "Dad?" she inquired. "Drowsy. How is Grandma Marjorie doing?" In a split second, Logan's expression changed. Warm grin. Gentle voice. Dad mode. "She'll be all right, but she's sick, bug." After giving Chloe a forehead kiss, he took his keys and left. Swinging clothing bag. When someone places a lie on the floor and expects you to cover it with a rug, the house fell silent in that particular way. Swinging her legs, Chloe climbed onto her chair. Is it possible for us to attend Aunt Madeline's wedding? I froze. Getting married? I said it again, as if it were a foreign word. Chloe nodded as if it were clear. It is this weekend. According to Daddy, Logan had made no mention of getting married. Never once. Not a casual "hey, my sister's getting married" kind of thing. Don't panic. Who informed you of that? I asked too calmly. Chloe gave a shrug. Last night. He said it over the phone. Mom, stop, he said. Oh, so there was a script. I'm trying to keep Hannah calm. My lines were simply not delivered to me. Chloe's big, trusting eyes were fixed on me, so I plastered a compassionate expression on my face. I said, go get dressed. She got off, whistling, and said, and don't forget your backpack. I stood there with pancake batter drying on my skin, and a sensation like wet cement sitting in my chest. Because you learn the difference between forget and hid when you've been married long enough. Logan remembered the wedding of his sister. He concealed it, indicating that he was instructed to do so. And Logan obliged, devoted to his mother, as if it were a religion. I drove Chloe to school as usual, kissed her on the cheek, grinned at her teacher, and watched her rush inside with her hair sparkling purple. I then tried to come up with a plausible answer while sitting in the parking lot and staring straight ahead. Perhaps Madeline had a little wedding. Perhaps they had postponed it because Marjorie was actually ill. Perhaps I was exaggerating. The other thing toxic families do is that they don't simply leave you out. They teach you to question your own intuition. It buzzed on my phone. Logan is in the hospital. It's a complete disaster. Chloe. Don't worry. Later, I'll give you an update. Hospital. Yes. When I felt crazy with Logan's folks, I drove home and did what I normally did. I searched for invoices. They were buried behind Costco paper towels in a folder in the cupboard, since it seems that our marriage depended on secret documents and bulk purchases. Spreadsheets were in there. When accountability and printed emails weren't involved, Logan adored spreadsheets. On top of that, he loved a shiny contract with gold lettering that said, Oak and Iron Catering, Fairview Country Club. Sunday is the event date. There were 112 visitors, 31 kids, and my 8-year-old somehow didn't fit in. I turned to the schedule of payments. The deposit has been paid. Payment for the second installment. The last payment is due tomorrow, Thursday, at 9:30 a.m. Then I noticed it. Hannah is the billing contact. My email, connected account. My name is our joint checking. Not Logan's. Not Madeline's. Mine. Because 3 years ago, just after informing me that I did a great job folding napkins for Thanksgiving, Marjorie grinned across my dining table and remarked, Hannah, you're so organized. It's easier if the family stuff goes through you. I replied, sure. Because I still felt that hard work is rewarded, and I wanted tranquility and a sense of belonging. Just present and complicit, not boisterous or arrogant. Because denial is a tenacious beast, I watched it twice. After that, my screen went dark, and I sat in my quiet home listening to my own breathing and the hum of the refrigerator when I became aware of something that made my stomach turn. There was no wedding involved. This has to do with Chloe. Because Marjorie would have put up with me if she had only despised me. Marjorie cherished having someone to despise. She had something to do between evaluating people's gardens and brunch. However, Chloe was evidence. Evidence that I was permanent. Evidence of my lineage. Evidence that, in theory, I was family. Marjorie was unable to tolerate that. I might have let out a scream. I could have called Logan and left a manifesto in his voicemail, spilling 9 years' worth of suppressed pain. They would have loved it if I had drove to Fairview Country Club and stormed into the rehearsal dinner. That way, the narrative would have changed from Marjorie being harsh to Hannah being unstable. I didn't yell as a result. I took one silent step. I logged into our bank after opening my laptop. Everything resided in the joint account. Chloe's after-school program, Logan's truck payment, groceries, utilities, autopay, mortgage, and evidently Marjorie's ideal wedding. I gazed at the balance. Money wasn't the only factor. It served as evidence. Evidence that, despite being treated as though I should be appreciative of the privilege, I had been carrying more than my fair share. The necessities were covered by Logan's salary. The cushion was constructed by my freelance work and small projects I completed after Chloe went to sleep. It was me who was able to recall due dates. When things didn't process, I was the one who called the insurance provider. The spreadsheet that Logan adored was created by me. Legally, I wasn't stealing because my name was on that account. I was protecting. You may believe that the moment you snap is loud if you've never been pushed hard enough. There are tranquil moments. It's clicking transfer at times. I opened the different account I had maintained before to our marriage. That's the one my mother demanded I keep on hand. I used to believe that, just in case, meant auto repairs. I wanted the balance to say something, so I started the transfer, clean and simple, leaving exactly $14,286 behind. Not a message, a receipt, a mistake, or an oops. I verified the transfer. After the loading circle spun, it was finished. Just a shift in reality, no fireworks. I shut down the laptop. I packed after that. Not for show, not for retaliation, not for oxygen, nor for Chloe. Because I was going to demonstrate to my daughter that she belonged with me, if Marjorie wanted to discuss belonging. My plan wasn't flawless. I had a school pickup, a deadline, and a truck that had just struck my nervous system. When life breaks, I did what all stressed out American mothers do. I picked up my phone and made travel arrangements. Florida appeared first since the program is able to detect instability. 3 tickets were still available on the trip that evening, and there was a hotel with a pool and a refundable cost. I made a click. I made the payment. I used my credit card, which is in my name, to pay for the accommodation and the trip. Since I already knew how that would turn out, I kept it a secret. I was overreacting, according to Logan. According to Marjorie, I was self-centered. Madeline would weep. Chloe would also witness adults punishing her for simply being alive. No. It seemed like any other weekday afternoon when I brought Chloe up from school. With her barrette still gleaming and her backpack bouncing, she dashed to the car. "Mom, you know what?" My voice was too bright when I said, "Hey baby. What would you think of going on an adventure?" Her eyes grew wide. I answered, like a surprise, "Like you and me. Only us." She paused. "Will Daddy arrive?" I softly said, "No." Chloe glanced at her hands. "Were we not invited?" My throat tightened when I heard an 8-year-old ask that question, since it indicated that she was already aware of social rejection and how it hurts. I said, "We weren't invited." Her expression became motionless, as if her brain rejected the information. She muttered, "But Aunt Madeline likes me." I felt my teeth clenched as I remembered Marjorie's cool, snarky voice. I extended my arm to grasp Chloe's hand. I said, carefully selecting every word, "Some people say things that aren't true. Additionally, they occasionally act rudely, but that's about them, not you." Her eyes brightened. Did I make a mistake? Something inside me opened up when I was asked that question. A vow, not rage. "No," I replied firmly. "There was nothing wrong with you. The issue is not you. You are never required to earn a spot." Chloe gave a sniff. "Where are we heading, then?" I grinned. It was my first genuine smile of the day. "Somewhere with ice cream and a large pool. No one has the right to tell you that you don't belong elsewhere." She blinked. "Disney. Is that right?" It was. Of course. I suggested it might be. With just one luggage and Chloe's backpack, we strolled through the airport that night. She gripped my hand as if the universe could change its mind if she let go. I got her a pretzel that was larger than her face. I led her to choose an absurd keychain. I saw the melancholy begin to fade a little as her curiosity took over. I sent Logan a message before we boarded. "I am safe, as is Chloe. We're going on vacation. Don't get in touch with me via your mom. When I'm ready, I'll get in contact." Then, as timestamps are important in America when individuals like Marjorie want to alter reality, I sent the same email. As the plane took off, I saw Chloe push her forehead against the window while I switched my phone to airplane mode. Not the calm of defeat, just silence. The silence of realizing you don't have to stay in a room where you've been insulted. We woke up Thursday morning in a motel room that had a subtle scent of waffle maker syrup and chlorine. As if gravity didn't exist, Chloe bounced on the bed. "First, the pool?" she inquired. "First, the pool?" I concurred. We went swimming. Pancakes were our meal. Chloe laughed so much that she snorted, and after snorting for a few hours, she laughed even more. She wasn't someone's disgrace, she was just a child. It's not difficult to conceal. Just a child with bright eyes and damp hair, and a mother, who was at last picking her. My phone then started up again. Voicemails, missed calls, and texts that appeared to have been penned by trembling hands. Logan's voicemail came in first, jarring and frantic. "What the devil did you do, Hannah? Madeline is in a panic. The account. Give me a call now, Hannah." Madeline's message was a complete meltdown, the kind when everything ends because the spotlight is not as bright as it should be. She cried, "This is my wedding. Without payment, the caterer won't begin serving. Make it right. Everything is being ruined by you." The voicemail from Marjorie came in like a show. She made an effort to come across as kind, as if she hadn't already publicly rejected my child. "Sweetheart, Hannah," she said. "There has been a miscommunication. Return the money. You don't need to throw a fit right now. Be sensible." "You mean a tantrum?" "Because it's taste when Marjorie makes fun of a child. It's a tantrum when a mother shields her child." Something that felt nearly like laughter rose in my chest as I gazed at the voicemails. Not happiness, but relief. For the first time, their fear demonstrated that I wasn't insane. All of a sudden, my presence became important when the payment was due. It's funny how that operates. I sent Logan a single message via SMS. "I watched the video. Never again lie to me." After that, I put my phone aside and went to grab ice cream with Chloe. Chloe grasped her cup with both hands as if it were holy and skipped the trek back. "Mom," she said softly. "Yes, sweetheart. Are we having problems?" My throat constricted. Why would we be in danger? She cast a downward glance. On the phone, Daddy sounded irate. "As well as Grandma. I am disliked by Grandma." The final sentence was spoken quietly, as if she had been carrying it all along. I halted my progress and knelt before her. I said, "Listen to me, steady. I'm not in problem with you. You are not an issue. You are not excessive. When Grandma is being cruel, you are not anything." Chloe's eyes brightened. "But why is she not fond of me? I wanted to communicate that you are connected to me. Because you are evidence that Marjorie cannot remove." I spared my 8-year-old from the full horror of adult psychology, though. I told her what she could believe. As I mentioned, there are instances when people take their frustrations out on others rather than repairing their own flaws. You are still lovable despite this. It indicates that Grandma's statements aren't secure. Chloe sniffed, then nodded as if she were putting it away. "All right," she muttered. "Can we get sprinkles tomorrow, too?" Followed by a pause. I chuckled because children are incredibly humble and resilient. I promised sprinkles tomorrow. I completed the unglamorous part of leaving that afternoon, the paperwork part, not the cinematic part, while Chloe took a nap. I launched a notes app and began making a list of the things I would need in the event that this became a legal mess. Passwords, health insurance numbers, school records, social security cards, and birth certificates. Since men don't always turn violent in times of panic, I changed the passwords first for safety reasons rather than out of retaliation. He can be careless at times. Occasionally, he begins making repairs. Additionally, I no longer trusted Logan's definition of fixing. My credit was frozen. My direct deposit was moved. I recorded each message. I then scheduled a consultation with a family law lawyer in my hometown. Danielle was her name. She sounded as though she had heard that my spouse's mother is problematic. It frequently had its own category. I explained the facts to her, and she listened. The video, the trip, the texts, the joint account, and my name on the invoice. After I was done, she calmly stated, "You're not abducting your child by going on a trip, but you should continue communicating in writing. Keep your whereabouts known, and unless your husband starts acting abusively, don't deny him reasonable contact. Moving money from a joint account is not against the law. But in a divorce, the court is concerned with equity. Secure it instead of spending it. We'll record your motivation, documentation, and fairness. Nearly as much as Marjorie loves control, America loves paperwork." I also remember something Danielle said. "The emotional safety of your daughter is important. Courts dislike grandparents who alienate a child," she stated. "Maintain documentation. Avoid exaggerating. Simply document." I did. Logan's texts began coming in quick spurts, like updates from a disaster area, back at the wedding on Sunday because, yes, they still had the wedding. Dinner is being held. According to the planner, the bar will be closed. People are posing inquiries. Mom is yelling at everyone. Kindly return it. After Madeline receives her pictures, We can discuss. Following Marjorie's ideal day. Once the guests had finished their meal, they ceased to whisper. After that, we could converse. Something settled in me like a final decision when I turned to face Chloe, who was curled up on the couch with a towel around her shoulders, watching cartoons, her hair damp, and a pool bracelet on her wrist. I wasn't compromising the dignity of my child. I didn't respond. Logan sent me another message on Sunday afternoon. But it was shorter. And different. Madeline was informed by the venue that they are unable to serve until the balance is cleared. They are actually just standing there. Everyone is observing. I had a clear, vivid picture of it. The Fairview Country Club has soft lighting, polished floors, and employees who have been taught to smile even in the face of chaos. Despite having flawless hair and mascara, Madeline looked stunning in her dress. Wearing pearls, Marjorie hissed at the coordinator as if the coordinator had stolen her youth. 112 guests are moving around in their chairs. 31 children request chicken tenders. You can't family your way out of a contract in America, so a wedding planner might whisper, "We need the payment before service." A contract is just that, a contract. The fact that my name was on it indicated that Marjorie was content to use my name when it made her life easier, but she was not content to allow my child to sit at a table. My phone rang. Logan. I left it in voicemail. I listened after that. Now his voice sounded ragged. He said, more quietly than before, "Hannah. Just please, please. Later, we'll work everything out. This is embarrassing for my mom, Madeline. Embarrassing." That word is neither cruel, nor incorrect. Embarrassing. The fact that people were observing was the true tragedy. I removed the voicemail, not because I didn't need it, but rather because I didn't want Chloe to hear his voice in that manner in the event that my phone unintentionally played it. Certain things are excluded from her world. Chloe and I ate fries from a paper basket while sitting on the balcony that evening. Warm air enveloped us like a blanket as palm trees swayed. "Are we going home to Daddy?" Chloe asked nonchalantly as she dipped a fry in ketchup. I inhaled. "To be honest," I said, "I don't know yet." She seemed to accept that by nodding. Then she asked the question that broke my heart, and her face tightened. "Did my father not want me to be there?" I could have told a falsehood. "Daddy loves you, honey," I could have said. It's difficult, but children can detect deception like smoke. I gave her the truth that she deserved. "Daddy made a poor decision," I remarked. Chloe whispered, "I like you better." And I laughed. Real and watery. "And I'm going to make sure you're safe while he figures out how to make better ones." "Same," I said. Logan's tone changed on Monday. He sounded smaller and more worn out, as if he had just spent the weekend tidying up a mess he had helped create. Not because he deserved it, but because I was prepared, I responded. "Where are you?" he inquired. I replied, "On a trip. With Chloe." "You can't just take her." "I can," I said coolly. "She is also my child. I also assured you that she is secure." After a moment of silence, I carefully wrote it down. The wedding of Madeline was a complete failure. I uttered a quiet sound. Yes, they needed to take out a loan. He acknowledged it. My father made a cash advance. Mom gave everyone a call. Dinner was postponed by the caterer. The bar was closed for almost 90 minutes. People were conversing. It wasn't good. I also inquired. Logan's voice broke. "What made you do it? Why would you harm us like this?" "To us? Not to Chloe? Not in my opinion. To the marriage ceremony." I noticed my jaw getting tense. "Logan," I said softly, "according to your mother, her child shouldn't be on camera with us. You misled me about a medical facility." In the background, I could hear you laughing. Quiet. Online. "You misled me about a medical facility. About Chloe. She didn't mean it." He made a feeble attempt. I chuckled briefly, and without humor. "As if picking out napkins," she said it. I had no idea what to do. He muttered. I said, "You did. You simply had no desire to do it." His breath caught. "It was more difficult to stand up to your mother than to lie to your wife. I apologize." The apology didn't make me feel better. Chloe wasn't the reason. Really. It wasn't for me. It was because he didn't like the consequences. "Now what?" he inquired. I saw Chloe laughing with another child in the shallow end of the pool, her shoulders relaxed in a manner I hadn't seen in months. "We're going to speak with a lawyer now," I said. We decide on custody. I'm tired of living with your mother, so we established boundaries. You're divorcing me. He muttered. To be honest, I don't know yet. However, you cannot treat us as optional and retain us. He sounded as though he wanted to argue. Then he didn't. Because he knew in his heart that I was correct. The house felt the same 10 days later when Chloe and I returned home. The air seemed exposed, as if something had been opened and could not be closed again, even though the walls and couch were the same. Logan stood by. Like a grocery store apology, flowers were placed on the table. I kept my hands off of them. Betrayal cannot be fixed with flowers. After entering, Chloe looked at Logan for a while before posing the question that grown-ups shun. What prevented me from attending the wedding? Logan winced and looked at me as if he needed to be saved. I stayed put. He dropped to his knees. His voice was rough as he said. It was wrong. Chloe's lip quivered as she said, Grandma said something mean, and I should have stopped it. Have you heard her? Logan gave a nod. Why didn't you stop her? I did. Chloe muttered. Logan gazed at the ground as if the carpet held the answers. Then he acknowledged the most repulsive reality. Since I was afraid. Chloe blinked. With a look of shame on his face, Logan nodded and said, Scared of Grandma. Chloe's face tensed in that tragic way children do when they see how frail adults can be. Well, she uttered, her voice modest but firm. I don't fear her. She's simply impolite. Clarity that adults avoid for decades emerges from the mouths of 8-year-olds. For the first time in 9 years, Logan's shoulders slumped, and he began to resemble a man realizing the harm his loyalty had caused rather than Marjorie's son. The ensuing weeks were uneventful. They were realistic. Danielle wrote documents. We made a provisional timetable. Logan took up residence in the guest room. Since writing prevents tone rewriting, we began communicating more in writing than in person. It seems that some men need therapy to realize that boundaries are not a personal attack, which is why Logan began going to therapy. Most nights, Chloe stayed with me. Logan and her had scheduled times. She was picked up from school by him. He arrived. He made an effort. I observed. He put forth effort, but I didn't give him forgiveness. However, I became aware. Marjorie as well. Escalating was the only way Marjorie knew how to regain control. She texted first. You must stop, Hannah. We don't deal with family issues this way. You will be held responsible. Who will be responsible? The police at the wedding. She then wrote lengthy emails about respect and family harmony. She then attempted to contact Chloe via Logan, acting as though an 8-year-old existed to appease a grandmother. When Logan eventually told her no, she arrived. Unannounced, pearls on, anger polished to a shine, Tuesday afternoon, she didn't inquire about Chloe. Naturally, she didn't. She pointed at me in my own driveway after getting out of her SUV as if she owned the road. She declared, You are ruining this family. I examined her. Hello, Marjorie. That you finally acknowledged my existence is nice. Don't be smart, she yelled. I said, I'm not being smart. I'm telling the truth. You stole money. I moved funds from an account that is in my name, I clarified. Her eyes flashed when she said, and my attorney is documenting everything. Attracted by the sound, Logan followed me outside. Immediately, Marjorie's face softened. A performance smile, and a sweet motherly voice. She cooed, Oh, honey. Observe what she's doing to you. Logan refrained from giving her a hug. He was not grinning. He remained motionless. There was a flicker in Marjorie's face. Perplexity. Because Logan was expected to run in Marjorie's world. Mom! Logan muttered. You must go. Marjorie blinked. Pardon me. You must go, he said again. You made terrible remarks about Chloe. You told a lie. I lied because of you. And you made Hannah feel ashamed. Marjorie's jaw tightened. I didn't embarrass anyone. Logan's jaw tightened as he said, She embarrassed herself. That isn't accurate, he stated. Marjorie looked at him as if he had committed a crime. And you don't get access to us if you can't respect my wife and my daughter. Then she turned to face me and hissed. This is you. I shrugged and said. You've poisoned him. Perhaps your system was already failing, Marjorie, if the truth is poison. Before she could even consider enlisting my child in her conflict, I moved forward as her gaze darted to the window in Chloe's room. My voice became as serene as glass. I warned her. You won't like what happens next if you ever say one cruel thing to my child again. Marjorie flared her nostrils. I briefly feared that she would slap me. Then, with her tires squealing as she backed out like she was escaping punishment, she whirled around and charged back to her SUV. Logan let out a breath. I did not offer him congratulations. Although it demonstrated something significant, one admirable moment cannot undo 9 years of cowardice. This was something he could have done sooner. He simply didn't. After that, Logan had therapy, paperwork and boundaries, a temporary custody schedule, and rules that didn't change for Marjorie's brief visit. Marjorie attempted to explain to the family that I was unstable, spiteful, envious, or any other term that gave her a sense of control. However, Chloe was never a suitable target for propaganda. One evening, she told me quietly and matter-of-factly, as if she were reporting the weather. My grandma said I don't belong. I drew her in. I said. She was wrong. Logan heard her say. And you never have to shrink to fit someone else's cruelty. I saw a change in his expression when he realized that this wasn't about me winning an argument. It concerned Chloe's identity construction and whether she would base it on truth or shame. Chloe and I sat in our new apartment half a year later. Nothing fancy, just a pool she loved, sunshine, and silence. It was not an opulent getaway. It was a place of reset, where nobody could arrive without warning without facing repercussions. With her tongue protruding in focus, Chloe colored at the table. She said, "Mom." Without raising her gaze. "Do I fit in with you?" I put everything down. I bent closer. I said, "You belong with me and with those who love you, don't you?" As if her heart had been waiting for that line, she nodded contentedly. Then she smiled. "Is it possible for me to invite anyone I want to your wedding someday?" I let out a genuine, soft laugh. "You can," she said. "Then I'm inviting you. Because you're my favorite." I gave her a tight hug that made her squeak. Chloe didn't belong with them. According to Marjorie. She was correct. But not in the sense she intended. Chloe didn't belong in places where children are viewed as a burden and love is conditional. She had to earn basic kindness because she didn't belong anywhere. I finally belonged to myself, and she belonged with me. Madeline received her pictures. She also had a wedding that is still talked about. The one where the bar closed, the dinner stalled, the payments didn't clear, and the yelling began. Logan also discovered firsthand what happens when you prioritize your mother over your family. No wedding was ruined by me. I destroyed a delusion. And delusions were bound to shatter. It just so happened that I had the bank app in my hand. I appreciate you staying to the very end. Please like and subscribe for more if this story resonated with you. Who do you think was truly at fault in this situation, I wonder? Tell me in the comments. My nephew tried to steal 6 restaurants after my brother's death, forged papers, poisoned smoothies, life without parole. Frank Gallagher is my name. My age is 66. Additionally, I witnessed the removal of my younger brother's casket from Boston Street, Joseph's Cathedral last Monday by 6 men dressed in dark suits. My nephew Dylan Hayes, whose cologne was so potent that it sliced through the incense, appeared at my elbow while the organ was still playing. "Uncle Tom, you've got 96 hours to sign over the restaurants. After that, I'm filing a lawsuit that'll destroy you." He leaned in close, his breath hot against my ear, and whispered, "Uncle Tom." He smiled, but it wasn't the grave smile you'd expect at a funeral. No, this was the smile of someone who had been anticipating and preparing for this moment. Neither my voice nor my hands trembled. I just turned to face him. I said, "All right, Dylan. Thursday at noon, your lawyer's office." The 41-year-old man in his 1000 suit paused for a moment before his smile returned. He had anticipated tears. He had anticipated me pleading with him, reminding him that I had known him since the day he was born and that I had covered his college expenses when his father, my brother Patrick Gallagher, was too arrogant to seek assistance. Instead, I simply nodded to him quietly and left my brother's grave. As I climbed into my old Honda Civic, I could feel Dylan's gaze on my back. I caught a glimpse of him and his expectant spouse, Brooke Whitman, in the rearview mirror. They both appear perplexed. They believed they had won the lotto. With 6 locations throughout Boston, Gallagher's restaurant group has a net worth of more than $9.5 million. They were unaware of what was about to happen. Please let me know where you're watching from in the comments section before I reveal how I exposed his lies and discovered something much more sinister than greed. Additionally, please like and subscribe to this channel if you think that patience always triumphs over arrogance. Patrick Gallagher, my brother, was 61 years old. He had been battling what the doctors referred to as early onset Alzheimer's for the previous 4 years. It began modestly, with misplaced keys and forgotten names. However, he rapidly declined 8 months ago. He was unable to recall the recipe for tomato sauce that our mother had taught us in her Sui kitchen. Driving to the restaurants where he had worked for 33 years, he would get lost. Then he passed out in his apartment 4 weeks ago. Massive stroke, the doctor said. Before the ambulance could reach him, he passed away. I thought so. Because of his illness and confusion, Patrick had been under a lot of stress. Dylan, his son, is always pressuring him to retire so that the next generation can take over. It was logical. What surprised me was Dylan's poise and assurance at the funeral, as if he had been practicing a speech for the reception at our flagship restaurant on Newbury Street, which Patrick and I had co-founded in 1994. Dylan seemed to own the crowd as he moved through it. He shook hands with our suppliers, assured Rosa DeLuca, our head chef, that everything would go on as usual, and humbly accepted condolences. I observed him. You learn to read people after 37 years in the restaurant industry. You learn to identify the vendors who dilute their goods, the staff members who rob the register, and the customers who will leave without paying. Dylan's sorrow appeared practiced. He would check his phone every few minutes, type a few words quickly, and then turn to face the door as if he were expecting a significant other. Dylan cornered me in the upstairs office, where Patrick and I used to count the night's receipts, celebrate our first profitable year, and toast with cheap whiskey when we opened our second location, after the last visitor had left and Rosa and her team had cleaned up and gone home. Tom, Dylan said. Uncle Tom is no more. It had been nearly a year since he had called me that. We must talk about the business scenario. Business circumstance? After a day of hurried conversations and vacuous condolences, I repeated, my voice rough. On the desk, he set a leather portfolio. There were numerous documents inside, all marked with yellow tabs. When Dad's mind was still somewhat clear, he signed these 8 months ago. A power of attorney. He wanted all business decisions to be made by me. You are aware of his confusion. I examined the documents. Every page had my brother's signature at the bottom. However, something didn't feel right. Patrick had never been good at writing by hand. Only he could read the scrawl of a doctor. However, these signatures were overly controlled and tidy, practiced. Whispering, Patrick never mentioned this to me, I said. Dylan's mouth clenched. Let's face it, Uncle Tom, Dad no longer trusted your judgment. You're stuck in the past. You wouldn't let us grow into delivery apps. I had received offers, including one from a corporate chain offering $14 million for the entire operation. Patrick and I had laughed about it over beers. We're not selling our mother's recipes to some corporation that'll turn them into frozen meals, he had said. He wouldn't update the menus or even consider selling to one of the restaurant groups that had been calling for years. As Dylan went on, reclining in the leather chair that had once belonged to Patrick, the truth is that Dad left me in charge. These documents are legal and binding. You own 35%, I own 65%, and I'm making some changes. First, we're bringing in new management. Second, we're hiring a consulting firm to audit everything. Dylan slid another document across the desk and said, you have 96 hours to sign the transition documents. If you don't, my lawyer will file a suit for breach of fiduciary duty, mismanagement, and embezzlement. Third, you're stepping down as operating partner 35%. Patrick and I had always been 50/50 partners, splitting everything down the middle for 34 years. Large cash withdrawals, mysterious expenses, and embezzlement, the word hit like a slap. I had never stolen a dime. All cash withdrawals were recorded. There were also legitimate payments to day laborers and tips for suppliers, the kind of underhanded business dealings that kept a restaurant afloat in a city like Boston. I said, keeping my voice level, I'll need to speak with my attorney. Dylan got up and buttoned his suit jacket. You do that, but Tom, think carefully. You're 66 years old. Do you really want to spend your retirement in court? Or worse? He left the thread hanging. Sign the papers. Take your 35% and enjoy your golden years. Fight me, and I'll make sure you end up with nothing. I sat by myself in the office, surrounded by pictures of Patrick and me over the years. Opening day 1994. Our parents cutting the ribbon. Patrick smiling with tomato sauce on his apron. Us with our arms around each other's shoulders. I heard his BMW start in the parking lot. I heard the pricey engine purr as he drove away. After waiting until the building was completely quiet, I opened the desk's bottom drawer, which I kept locked, and took out a business card that I had been hoarding for 5 months. It was a card left for me by a former customer who had been dining at our restaurant every Friday night for 5 years. Veronica Hale is a lawyer who specializes in corporate litigation and fraud investigation. I picked up my phone and dialed, and on the second ring, her secretary answered. Hale & Associates. This is Frank Gallagher. Veronica told me to call if I ever needed help. The secretary's voice warmed up right away. Gallagher, Miss Hale has been anticipating your call. She asked me to let you know that she has cleared her schedule. Would you be able to visit her office tomorrow morning at 8:30? At 8:30 the following morning, I was sitting in Veronica Hale's corner office overlooking Boston Harbor. She was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes behind designer glasses, the kind of attorney who could make the opposing counsel uneasy simply by entering a courtroom. She poured coffee from a French press, the real stuff, dark and strong. Tom, I'm sorry about Patrick. He was a good man, thank you. Tell me everything, I told her. We'd spoken many times over her Friday night dinners, always about food, family, and Boston's evolving restaurant scene. I'd never asked what kind of law she practiced, but now I knew. When I was done, Veronica sat back in her chair. You said that the signature on those power of attorney documents looked wrong, too neat. Patrick's handwriting was terrible. Veronica took notes, her pen moving quickly across a yellow legal pad. Dylan's threats, the power of attorney, the accusations of embezzlement. Veronica took out her phone and called Ethan, saying, I need you in my office. Bring your forensic kit. She hung up and turned to face me, asking, Do you have copies of those documents, Tom? I took out my phone and showed her the pictures I had taken the previous evening with trembling hands. 5 minutes later, a young man in his 30s came into the office with a laptop and a small case, and Veronica introduced him as Ethan Park, forensic document examiner. Look at these signatures. Compare them to these, she said, pulling out a file folder that contained documents I recognized, vendor contracts and lease agreements that Patrick had signed over the years. See how the pen pressure is consistent throughout? That's consistent with tracing. Ethan set up his laptop, uploaded my photos, and started comparing them side by side. He zoomed in, examined the ink flow, and analyzed pen pressure. After 10 minutes, he looked up. These power of attorney signatures are fakes. Someone traced these from older signatures, probably from documents that predate his illness. He gestured to the screen. These documents completely lack the tremor that was developing in Patrick Gallagher's later signatures, consistent with his neurological condition. Veronica grinned, but it wasn't a pleasant smile. Those documents Dylan showed you are worthless, but that's not the interesting part. What do you mean? Dylan doesn't really know what he's trying to steal. She pulled out another file, this one much thicker. Do you remember when Patrick set up the corporation? When you two decided to protect yourselves from lawsuits? I nodded. That was the smile of a lawyer who had just discovered the weakness in an opponent's armor. According to Veronica, your lawyer at the time was very intelligent. He not only set up an LLC but also a number of holding companies and a family trust. Gallagher's restaurant group isn't owned by you and Patrick. That was in 2001, after a customer attempted to sue us for a slip and fall. Our lawyer had advised incorporating and creating an LLC. Veronica went on. You, Patrick, and your mother, Evelyn, do you remember signing those papers? It's owned by the Gallagher Family Trust, which is governed by a board of 3 trustees. I thought my bewilderment must have shown on my face. I answered incoherently. At the time, it had sounded like legalese. When Patrick passes away, his trustee position passes to his estate, which means it goes into probate. Your mother is still alive, Tom. She is still living in that assisted care facility in Quincy, still legally competent, and the trust documents state that no significant decisions can be made without the unanimous consent of all 3 trustees. Exactly. And there's more. Veronica produced another document. The trust also owns the real estate. The building on Newbury Street. You and Patrick didn't just lease it. Dylan doesn't automatically inherit anything, so he can't sell the restaurants, fire me, or do anything else without my mother's approval. I sat back feeling like I could breathe for the first time in 2 days. You bought it in 2006, and it's now worth about $4.8 million. The building in Cambridge where your second location is located is worth another $3.6 million. Dylan believes he's stealing a restaurant, but he has no idea that he's trying to steal a real estate empire. We go to court, show that the signatures are fake, and Dylan leaves with nothing. Veronica's face darkened. Tom, If Dylan is willing to falsify legal documents and threaten you with false charges of embezzlement, what else might he have done? What are you suggesting? Patrick's rapid decline over the past 8 months. Have you ever asked yourself if it was really natural? The room felt cold. I told the medical examiner that my younger brother, who I had taught to cook, shielded from bullies in elementary school, and who had been my best friend for 61 years, had suffered a stroke, but even my own voice sounded far away. Medical examiners make preliminary decisions based on clear evidence. Veronica leaned forward. I have a friend at the DA's office. If you're willing, I can make a call. Tom, Patrick, was 61, and despite having Alzheimer's, he was generally healthy. He had a complete physical 8 months prior, with the exception of cognitive problems, and then he quickly deteriorated and passed away from a massive stroke. The next 4 days were the longest of my life. I went to restaurants and maintained appearances while requesting a complete toxicology analysis, and asking some questions that perhaps should have been asked the first time. Do it, I said, my words coming out harder than I intended. If Dylan did something to Patrick, if he hurt my brother, I want to know. Veronica made the call. On Wednesday, Dylan arrived at the Newbury Street location, strutting around as if he owned the place, telling the staff about the exciting changes that were coming, and introducing his wife, 5-year-old Brooke, who was 8 months pregnant and looked like she was constantly checking her phone, as the new director of operations. We're going to modernize everything, Brooke told Rosa, our head chef who had been with us for 18 years, updating the menu, bringing in some molecular gastronomy elements, maybe some fusion concepts. Rosa, a 62-year-old Sicilian woman who had learned to cook from her grandmother, just stared at Brooke as if she had suggested setting the kitchen on fire. She had been a pharmaceutical sales representative when she first met Dylan and was now apparently qualified to run a restaurant empire. Dylan called Uncle Tom, my lawyer's office, on Thursday at 11:45. It is noon. Avoid being late. I've already arrived. I told a lie. I'll see you shortly. His lawyer's office was not where I was. I was in the conference room with Veronica Hale, Ethan Park, 2 DA's office investigators, and a Boston Police Department detective. Dylan called again at 12:20. You're where? I said, come to Veronica Hale's office. Suite 1000, 461 Congress Street. What? We made a deal, Uncle Tom. The office of my lawyer. The plans were altered. Come by yourself, Dylan, or don't come at all. At 12:45, he showed up. With Brooke at the back. When he saw how crowded the conference room was, his self-assured smile vanished. When the detective got up and introduced himself, the smile vanished entirely. I'm Detective Sean Callahan from the Boston Police Department. Mr. Gallagher. We have some inquiries about the passing of your father. Dylan's expression turned white. I don't get it. Dad suffered a stroke. It has already been decided by the medical examiner. Indeed. Well, Veronica said. We've asked for a more comprehensive examination. These power of attorney documents you've been using to assert ownership are among the financial irregularities at Gallagher's restaurant group that we have been investigating. Copies were slid across the table by her. With the clinical accuracy of an expert witness, Ethan Park proceeded with his forensic analysis, highlighting the forged signatures. Mr. Gallagher, all of your decisions claiming authority under these documents are null and void because they are fraudulent. Who forged these signatures is the question. Dylan gave Brooke a look. Brooke glanced at her phone. Dylan remarked, I want a lawyer. Detective Sean Callahan said, you're right. However, you should be aware that the toxicology results were returned this morning before you leave. Suanylcholine levels were high in your father's body. This paralyzing medication is frequently used in healthcare settings. When taken in excess, it can mimic a stroke by causing respiratory failure. Very difficult to find unless you're looking for it. He hesitated. Your spouse was employed in the pharmaceutical industry. Medical supplies were available to her. The key to your father's apartment was also in her possession. She was seen there several times in the weeks prior to his death, according to several neighbors. Brooke got up so quickly that her chair fell back. I took no action. This is absurd. Tell them, Dylan. Dylan, however, was not observing her. His gaze was fixed on the table. A mask of crumbling denial covered his face. We deleted your text messages as well. The ones between you and Brooke, according to one of the DA investigators. Brooke complained about the weight, you calculated inheritance values, you talked about how long your father would last, and, Veronica added, there was a particularly intriguing message in which Brooke asked if you thought the medication she had been adding to his morning smoothies was working quickly enough. The exact symptoms Patrick had displayed could be brought on by the medication succinylcholine given gradually over several weeks. His doctors had diagnosed him with Alzheimer's disease because of his confusion, weakness, and rapid decline. When Dylan eventually raised his head, I noticed something in my nephew's eyes that I had never seen before. Fear. He muttered, we didn't mean for him to die. All we wanted was for him to be more perplexed, so that the power of attorney would appear authentic and people would think he had signed it. According to Brooke, the dosage was safe. With mascara streaming down her meticulously applied makeup, Brooke was now crying. We simply needed the money, and we were accelerating the inevitable. Dylan has been gambling. Dangerous people are what we owe. They were already being read their rights by Detective Sean Callahan. From the corridor came 2 officers in uniform. I saw Dylan, Brooke, and my nephew whom I had held as a baby, taught to ride a bike, and who had killed his own father for restaurants he couldn't even legally inherit, all placed in handcuffs. The trial went on for 7 weeks. The forensic evidence, falsified documents, and text messages that demonstrated months of preparation were presented by the prosecution. They brought in neighbors who had witnessed Brooke carrying smoothies from our restaurant into Patrick's apartment, claiming to be checking on her father-in-law. A pharmaceutical company whistleblower who verified that Brooke had been ordering succinylcholine claiming it was for her sales demonstrations testified on their behalf. Dylan's defense team attempted to place the blame on Brooke. The text messages contradicted his claims that he was unaware of the drug and didn't comprehend what she was doing. Messages in which he gave her encouragement, inquired about the effectiveness of the plan, and estimated the time until they could seize power. The jury rejected Brooke's defense's attempt to argue that Dylan had coerced her, and that she was a victim of his pressure and gambling debts. They came across 2 individuals who had determined that their ambition was more important than Patrick's life. On a chilly March afternoon, the decision was rendered. Both of them are guilty. Fraud, conspiracy, and first-degree murder. Dylan was given a life sentence without the possibility of release. Brooke's 30 came to life. She would give birth while incarcerated. That child, who would grow up knowing their parents were murderers, would be my grandnephew or niece. I felt nothing but emptiness as I sat in the courtroom gallery, where my nephew and brother had once been. Patrick was gone, but justice had been done. I didn't immediately return to the eateries. Dylan and Brooke had been standing there, strategizing, calculating, and waiting for my brother to pass away, and I couldn't face them. I remained in my Dorchester apartment, where I had resided for 22 years. I read the old letters from Patrick. I examined pictures. I allowed myself to mourn. I then realized what I needed to do when I woke up one April morning. I gave Veronica Hale a call. I'd like to reorganize the trust. What were you thinking of? The restaurants continue to be trusted by the family. However, I would like to add something new. A culinary scholarship fund for children from Dorchester, South Boston, and the areas where Patrick and I were raised. Children who aspire to be chefs but are unable to pay for culinary school. Veronica remained silent for a while. Tom, that's stunning. That would have delighted Patrick. It will be known as the Patrick Gallagher Memorial Scholarship. We will send 6 students to culinary school each year. Everything, including living expenses and full tuition. Additionally, they will have the opportunity to work at our restaurants after they graduate if they so choose. Like Patrick and I did, learn the company from the ground up. How about the property? Millions of dollars are worth those structures. The restaurant on Newbury Street is converted into a non-profit educational establishment. As part of their training, students work there. We maintain a high standard of quality and preserve my mother's recipes, but we prioritize education over profit. We continue to operate the other locations, but the profits go toward a new foundation I want to establish as well as the scholarship fund. What sort of base? Alzheimer's studies. Patrick vanished piece by piece for 4 years. That shouldn't have to happen to any family. Veronica assisted me with the setup. That fall, the first 6 recipients of the Patrick Gallagher Memorial Scholarship attended the Culinary Institute of America. $2.5 million was donated to Alzheimer's research by the Gallagher Family Foundation. Additionally, Gallagher's on Newbury Street evolved into a teaching restaurant where students learned how to conduct business ethically in addition to how to cook. Evelyn, my mother, who is now 94 and still very intelligent, attended the teaching restaurant's opening. She sobbed as she watched young chefs make her tomato sauce recipe in the kitchen she had inspired. She squeezed my hand and said, "Patrick would be so proud." "At least I hope so, Ma. I'd like to believe that." Dylan occasionally writes letters from behind bars. They are in a box in my closet, unopened. I'm not prepared to read them yet. Perhaps I never will be. Some betrayals are too serious to be forgiven. However, each year when I witness 6 new students receive their Gallagher scholarships, watch them stand in our kitchen learning my mother's recipes, and listen to them discuss their aspirations and futures, I get the impression that Patrick is right next to me, smiling with tomato sauce on his apron, proud of what we have created together. What I've discovered is this. Greed is noisy and awkward. It is prone to errors. Evidence is left behind. It undervalues those it seeks to eradicate. However, genuine love for your family, your community, and the things you create together is quiet. It's patient. That is more powerful than any quantity of funds or aspirations. Dylan believed he was robbing eateries. He didn't realize that Patrick and I had created something that couldn't be taken. Neither the bank accounts nor the real estate had it. It was in our mother's recipes, in the staff who had been with us for decades, in each meal we proudly served, and in each client who had grown to be like family. Forging signatures is possible. It is possible to poison someone. You could attempt to appropriate their legacy. However, if it was constructed on a real foundation, it cannot be destroyed. I want to ask you a question now. Have you ever witnessed a loved one pass away due to illness or treachery? Have you ever had to defend your memory in front of people who were only interested in dollar signs? Share your story with me in the comments section below. I am reminded by your stories that I am not alone in this. Because sometimes the best retaliation isn't retaliation at all. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Gilded Vengeance. It involves ensuring that those who attempted to harm you fail so badly that their names are forgotten and the victim of their actions is never forgotten. I lost my job and home after false accusations. My family chose my brother's lie over my evidence. A court finally set the record straight. When I was wrongly charged, my brother launched a smear campaign to put me in jail. My parents hailed him as a hero for safeguarding the victims. I made them regret it. They are now imploring me. Sup, Reddit. My brother attempted to bury me after I was wrongly accused, shouting rot in prison. My parents disowned me and labeled me a predator. I am a 41-year-old male who owns an electrical contracting business and teaches basic electrical safety courses twice a week at Riverside Community College. Not exactly glamorous, but I make 6 figures when commercial deals come in, and the teaching job keeps my skills sharp. Additionally, the college pays $85 per hour for 2 3.5-hour sessions. Easy money. The horror began on a Tuesday, when Dean Whitaker, the department head, summoned me to his office following my morning session. I assumed it was about the new curriculum they intended to implement for the fall semester. Perhaps a wage increase, something reasonable. Dean Whitaker was sitting there, with Dr. Miranda Pierce, the student services director, and a college attorney whose name I couldn't remember because I was too busy reading the room. The mood was funeral home incorrect. Too many serious expressions for a scheduling talk. Jack Sullivan. Thank you for coming in. 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 Dean Whitaker held his hands together as if he were going to deliver awful news regarding a grave prognosis. We need to talk about certain charges made about your behavior at last month's Skills USA competition. My brain immediately went on red alert. What are the allegations? 2 students have filed separate allegations alleging unwanted physical contact happened over the tournament weekend in Sacramento. Given the gravity of these allegations, we are placing you on immediate administrative leave pending a thorough investigation. I stared at him as if he had grown a second head. What competition? The Skills USA Regionals will be placed in Sacramento from April 18th to 20th. I wasn't at the competition. Dr. Miranda Pierce leaned forward, using a professional counselor voice that made my teeth hurt. Jack, I realize how shocking this is to hear. These situations are always tough, but the most essential thing is that we prioritize student safety, and adhere to established standards. I wasn't at the tournament. So, I repeated slowly this time. I was working on a 3-phase installation at the new medical center in downtown. I can get the permits, inspection reports, and everything. Dean Whitaker's expression did not change. We will go over all documentation as part of the investigation. However, given the frequency of the reports and the gravity of the charges, we believe immediate suspension is the right response. Which reports are consistent? I was not there. I did not go to Sacramento. I was 62 miles away, running a conduit through a hospital, with surveillance cameras on each floor. Dean Whitaker finally stated, "Your name is on the trip roster." As if that was checkmate. I informed him that the roster was incorrect and offered to provide proof that I had been on a job site all weekend. Nobody pretended to care. The attorney eventually spoke out. Some people repeated corporate rubbish about liabilities and proper procedure. We need you to gather your materials and leave school today. Someone from Human Resources will contact you to discuss next steps. That's when I understood. They'd already determined that evidence was merely a nuisance that may complicate their neat little story. Can I at least know what I've been accused of? Dr. Miranda Pierce explained that student privacy rules prevent us from providing details without signed permissions. However, the severity of the claims requires prompt action. I wanted to pull out my phone and show them the work orders, signed inspection documents, and time-stamped photos I'd taken of the installation for the project file. But the fact that they were all sitting there together in this unified wall of bureaucratic certainty told me it didn't matter. They had selected their story. I was just the impediment. I cleared my desk in 15 minutes, grabbing my tools, a couple of reference books, and some flash drives containing teaching materials. The entire time, I was thinking about April 18th. I remember that weekend vividly since my hospital work had been a nightmare. Work on the critical corridor, with inspections anticipated for Tuesday a.m. I'd been on location since 6:30 a.m. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I was in charge of a team of 5 workers while also running the rough on the surgical wing. My back was killing me by Sunday night. I went home and spent an hour soaking in a hot bath. I had permits requiring my signature, inspection reports, progress images, and daily logs. 5 electricians who had worked with me all weekend. Over the course of 3 days, my phone probably pinged 180 times off the hospital's cell tower. 8 minutes of record checking would have resolved this issue immediately. They did not wish to check. I called my parents from the truck. My father responded on the second ring. They're accusing me of something that is physically impossible. I explained. No build-up. No drama. 2 pupils allege I did something at a tournament I didn't attend. They suspended me. My mother went on speaker. Her speech had the sharpness that comes with seeing an opportunity. What exactly do they claim happened? They won't give me information, but they stated it happened at the Skills USA tournament in Sacramento. I worked the hospital job all weekend. There was a pause. Then, my father. Do you have proof? Permits, inspection documentation, construction crew witnesses, and site images have all been signed. Then we'll handle this, he said, his tone calculating rather than reassuring. Come by the home tonight. We need to talk about strategy. That night, I retrieved every piece of material I had. Permits with my signature as the license holder on site, inspection reports from 3 separate walkthroughs that weekend, hospital security badge logs showing entry and exit times, crew statements, progress photos with timestamps, everything organized, chronological, and airtight proof that demonstrated physical impossibility rather than mere innocence. I wasn't in Sacramento. I was 62 miles away on a job site that left a paper trail that any first-year law student could verify in 8 minutes. I sent it all to Dean Whitaker at 11:30 p.m. with the subject line, Documentation April 18th, to 20th hospital job, and he never responded. My brother Evan Cole called me at 9:15 a.m. on Friday. I was still half asleep, but we grew up in the same house and shared the same surname, so I figured blood would count for something. Then, I remembered Evan Cole, who had always needed to be the better son. When I started my business at 28 and bought my first house at 31, he spent Thanksgiving dinner explaining to everyone how real careers required advanced degrees. When I paid off my truck in cash, he made a comment about how blue-collar money didn't build generational wealth. Our parents had always preferred his corporate path over my trade work, state MBA, nonprofit job title, and community leadership nonsense. He'd been posting ally content on social media for 2 years, Mostly performative threads about accountability and believing survivors. Evan, thank God. Did you hear what's happening? The college is trying to. I can't talk to you right now. His voice was cold and professional. I'm meeting with the college administration this afternoon. His career had stalled after being passed over for director twice. I just didn't know I'd become that cause. I wanted you to know that Lauren Cole and I are taking this very seriously. Taking what? Seriously? I wasn't even at the competition. I have documentation proving I was on a job site the entire weekend. Permits, inspections, crew statements. I have to go. He hung up. I tried calling back. Blocked. I tried texting. Blocked. I sat there in my truck, staring at my phone, thinking maybe I misheard. Evan Cole had sent a private message to my parents, aunt, and a couple of cousins, which Uncle Robert Rob Hayes forwarded to me. Perhaps he needed time to process, or maybe the college had fed him some nonsense that made him cautious. The warning shot came 5 hours later, when Evan Cole posted a message that felt like being stabbed in the chest. He used professional language to discuss serious allegations and support the investigative process, and he stated that he couldn't, in good conscience, maintain contact until the facts were established. After meeting with college officials and carefully reviewing the information they provided, Lauren Cole and I believe the students who have come forward. We will not be maintaining contact with Jack Sullivan, and we strongly urge the family to prioritize the safety and well-being of the young people involved in this situation. I read it 4 times, trying to make the words say something different. My mom responded first, "We support you both. This is heartbreaking but necessary." My dad agreed. "Some things are more important than family loyalty. You're a hero for standing up for the victims." My cousin Olivia Hayes. "Wait. What? Has anyone talked to Jack Sullivan?" My uncle Robert Rob Hayes. "This is insane. You're condemning him without hearing his side." I started typing a response. Deleted it. Started again. Deleted it. What was I supposed to say? That I wasn't there? I'd already told Evan Cole that he hadn't cared enough to look at the evidence before declaring me guilty in front of everyone we knew. I tried calling my father. I tried calling my mother, but she sounded like she was reading from a script. Evan Cole has shown us the college's concerns, and we believe the best course of action is to take a step back and let the investigation proceed without interference from family. I was on a job site 62 miles away with 5 witnesses and a stack of inspection documents, and I'm trying to show you evidence that I wasn't even there. We're not investigators, and we're not qualified to evaluate evidence. What we can do is support the process and make victims feel comfortable coming forward. We love you, but we need to think about the broader implications of what? Destroying an innocent person because it's easier than checking basic facts? She sighed, as if I was being difficult. We'll talk when you've calmed down. She hung up. Evan Cole had posted something on social media by Thursday night. My uncle Robert Rob Hayes screenshotted it and sent it to me before my mom made him delete his number from the family contacts. It's a long manifesto about believing survivors even if it costs you relationships, about how true accountability requires sacrifice, and about choosing what's right over what's easy. It received 420 likes in 2 hours. After 5 years of teaching there, I received a termination letter from the college on Friday morning. The letter used corporate language about maintaining safe learning environments and making difficult decisions in the interest of student welfare, and no one asked if he had verified any of the facts. I helped design their entire electrical safety curriculum. Had a 98% student approval rating. And never had a single complaint until 2 kids who'd never been in my class suddenly remembered I'd molested them at an event I hadn't attended. They fired me in 3 paragraphs, and my landlord sent me an eviction notice the next Wednesday. After being falsely accused of being a predator, my commercial account began pulling contracts, as word spreads quickly in the construction industry, and no one wants to be associated with that kind of liability. I was given 45 days to vacate, and there appears to be a morality clause buried in the lease about conduct that harms the property's reputation. In a single week, 3 jobs worth $165,000 in billings vanished. The general contractors who had been calling me for bids suddenly had scheduling conflicts. The supply house that had given me net 30 terms for 7 years switched me to cash only. My accountant sent a polite email suggesting we reassess our professional relationship, and friends stopped responding. People I'd known since high school abandoned me, my gym membership was mysteriously canceled, and the guy who ran the coffee shop near my apartment, where I'd been getting the same breakfast sandwich for 4 years, suddenly couldn't make eye contact with me when I walked in. I stopped going and kept messaging Evan Cole. When he blocked everything else, I tried email and sent him the entire evidence folder with every timestamp, photo, and piece of documentation proving I'd been on site that weekend, with the subject line, "Just please look at this. Delivery confirmed." Never opened. He decided I was guilty and the evidence was just noise, so I stopped explaining on day 14. I didn't return to my parents' house because I realized something while sitting in my empty apartment, surrounded by boxes I couldn't afford to move. No one who'd already chosen sides was going to look at proof. They wanted a villain, and I'd been perfectly cast. That door was welded shut, so I moved my belongings into a storage unit and slept on a folding bed in my friend Tyler Bennett's basement. I paid him in cash and rewired his panel, which appeared to have been installed during the Nixon administration. I spent the weekend organizing everything: permits, inspections, badge logs with exact timestamps, progress photos, and witness statements from the crew. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. I wasn't in Sacramento. I was on a job site 62 miles away, doing work that left a comprehensive paper trail. On Monday morning, I called a lawyer. Not a big firm. I couldn't afford it. But my uncle Rob Hayes knew someone who owed him a favor. A civil rights attorney in his mid-30s who did Title IX work and had a reputation for eating college administrators alive. When I arrived at the diner, she was already on her third coffee. "Walk me through it," she said, pulling out a legal pad. I did. The entire thing: the accusation, the suspension, the family implosion, Evan Cole's social media crusade, everything. She spent 25 minutes going through my evidence, and when she finally looked up, her expression was predatory. "This is bulletproof. You weren't there." "I know. So why the heck are they still pushing this?" "Because admitting they were wrong means admitting they railroaded an innocent guy. The college, the administrators, my brother, they all went public quickly and loudly, and walking it back now makes them appear incompetent or malicious. It's easier to keep insisting I'm guilty and hoping I slink away quietly." She nodded slowly. "Here's what you need to know. You have strong claims for defamation, tortious interference, and possibly Title IX violations. Your brother made specific, false, damaging statements that cost you income and housing. The college violated basic due process. And things will get ugly. It will take time and cost them more than they're willing to pay, but I'm not going anywhere. Here's how we play it. We don't engage in public, we preserve evidence, file the necessary complaints, and let them keep digging their hole deeper. Every time your brother posts, we screenshot it, and every time the college refuses to look at your evidence, we document it. What about Evan Cole? What about him? He's out there calling me a predator. He's coaching the families, and he's let him. Every post he makes, every statement he helps craft, every time he doubles down without checking basic facts, it becomes evidence. The more certain he acts, the worse he looks when we show he never verified anything. He's building your case for you. I liked her right away, and we spent the next hour going over the next steps. Before I left, she gave me one more piece of advice: send preservation letters to the college and Dr. Miranda Pierce, informing them that they must preserve all documents, emails, and records related to this case. I sent preservation letters that afternoon, filed complaints with the State Accreditation Board and the Department of Education, and began drafting the defamation lawsuit against Evan Cole. There was nothing dramatic or public about it, just bureaucratic machinery in motion. Evan Cole kept posting long threads about believing victims, how dangerous it was when families protected predators, about choosing moral courage over familial obligation. And the whole thing boiled down to convicting him first and then asking questions. Each post was screenshotted, logged, and added to the file. He wasn't even subtle about it. The police began their investigation 4 months ago. They checked the competition records, the chaperone list, the lodging logs, the transportation logs, and nothing. Then they looked at the hospital job, where they discovered my permits, inspection reports, badge logs, and 5 electricians who swore under oath that I had been on site all weekend. The detective called me in November, and he sounded tired in that way cops do when they realize they've wasted months on nonsense. We've finished our investigation, and I want you to know that we found no evidence linking you to Sacramento that weekend. Your alibi is solid, and we're closing this case with no criminal charges. What about the accusations? Long pause. We're reviewing how those allegations were documented, and who was involved in that process. That's all I can say. He hung up. I called my lawyer, who wasn't surprised. Perfect. Now we go after them. She'd been busy while I stayed quiet, filing discovery requests, and serving subpoenas on the college, Dr. Miranda Pierce, and Evan Cole. The college fought it, claiming student privacy, institutional privilege, and confidentiality protections. She tore through every objection like tissue paper, but first came the stonewalling. HR began ghosting, and the college's legal team sent form letters. We cannot comment on ongoing personnel matters. When my lawyer requested the hospital security badge logs, they claimed technical issues made the data unavailable. In December, the college's lawyer contacted me with a settlement offer of $65,000 for mutual non-disclosure and no admission of wrongdoing. The email had that desperate corporate smell to it, and my lawyer forwarded it to me with one word: laughable. She responded with our own offer. Full reinstatement, a public apology, $325,000, and the termination of Dr. Miranda Pierce, or we go to trial and expose every procedural failure in discovery. They went silent for 3 weeks. Then a reporter from the local paper began asking questions. The college's public relations office began putting out fires. And board members became concerned. Dr. Miranda Pierce had forwarded the Sacramento trip roster, which was a recycled template from the previous year, and my name was still on it. Donors began calling, and those unavailable hospital badge logs appeared with perfect timestamps. External pressure had forced them to face reality. Haley Morgan, an 8-year-old welding student, and Brianna Carter, a 7-year-old HVAC student, were the accusers. Dr. Miranda Pierce and the students' parents exchanged text messages about assisting them in organizing their memories. And there were multiple drafts of student statements with significant edits and additions that clearly did not originate from teenagers. During what was supposed to be a routine feedback session about the event, Dr. Miranda Pierce approached both of them after they had attended the Sacramento competition. Their initial statements had been vague, confused, and uncertain, but one email from Dr. Miranda Pierce to Haley Morgan's mother caught their attention. I know she's having trouble remembering specifics, but sometimes trauma makes memories fuzzy. Let's try the timeline exercise we discussed. Walking through the weekend hour by hour can help things surface. Another to Brianna Carter's father: I believe we have enough consistency now to move forward confidently, and the statements align well. There were more pages of it, with Dr. Miranda Pierce guiding, suggesting, and shaping every detail until the stories locked into place. However, the most damning evidence came from Evan Cole's own digital trail, which he documented because he was so convinced he was the hero. A communication to Haley Morgan's mother said, "I understand your daughter is having second thoughts. However, backing out now gives the message that if you put enough pressure on victims, they will give in. We need to demonstrate strength here." Another, "Don't let them fixate on timeframes and alibis. That's just a distraction tactic used by predators. What matters is the trauma, not the practicalities." He had kept everything. My lawyer scheduled depositions for February, and Evan Cole was the first to appear. The conference room smelled of old coffee and desperation, and he had prioritized his crusade over basic fact-checking at every opportunity. Evan Cole sat across from me for the first time in 9 months. He looked terrible, with dark circles under his eyes. His lawyer was some underpaid associate who kept checking his watch as if he had somewhere better to be. My lawyer looked like a shark that had just spotted blood in the water. She began softly, asking about his relationship with me, his work, and community advocacy. In late April, the college contacted me and asked if I would meet with them to discuss a serious situation. During that meeting, they informed me that 2 students had reported inappropriate contact during a competition weekend, but they did not provide specific details about what allegedly occurred. They said privacy laws prevented them from sharing details without parental consent. Did they tell you which competition? The Skills USA Regionals in Sacramento, April 18 through 20th. Did you confirm Jack Sullivan's attendance at any point during or after that meeting? Pause. Evan Cole looked at his lawyer, who nodded slightly. No, you didn't check the attendance records, didn't verify the chaperone list, didn't ask the college to confirm Jack Sullivan's presence? No. My lawyer let that sit for a moment. Jack Sullivan reached out to you after the accusation was made. Correct. Yes. And what did he tell you? He said he wasn't at the competition, and that he had proof he was working a job that weekend. What did you do with that information? I told him I couldn't discuss it with him, and ended the call. Did you ask to see the proof? No, he sent you documentation, permits, inspection reports, witness statements, and emails. I didn't open them. Why not? Evan Cole's jaw tightened. I'd already made my decision based on the information the college provided, and looking at his defense felt like it would jeopardize my ability to support the victims. Support the victims? My lawyer flatly repeated, even if the alleged victim wasn't actually victimized by your brother. I thought the allegations were credible, but you didn't verify them. My lawyer let it hang there. The court reporter's fingers stopped. Evan Cole's lawyer shifted in his seat, and the whole room could feel the weight of that admission settling like cement. You posted about this case on social media several times, correct? My lawyer slid a printed screenshot across the table. This is a message from you to Haley Morgan's mother. You made a public statement declaring your belief in the accusations, and your decision to cut contact with Jack Sullivan. You also assisted the families involved in organizing their statements. You wrote, and I quote, "Don't let them concentrate on timelines and alibis. That's just a distraction tactic that predators use." Do you remember writing that? Evan Cole stared at the paper. Yes. Were you aware that timelines might actually matter if, for example, the accused person wasn't present at the event in question? I thought you didn't think verification was important. I believe that protecting the students was more important than getting caught up in technicalities, such as whether your brother was actually present. His lawyer objected, but my lawyer withdrew the question and continued. You also messaged Haley Morgan's mother, encouraging her not to let Haley Morgan walk anything back, even after the student expressed doubts about her memory. Is that correct? I was trying to prevent her from being pressured into silence, or were you trying to prevent her from telling the truth when it became inconvenient for your narrative? Objection withdrawn. Let's talk about your testimony to the college board. You gave public comments, correct? Yes. And you stated that Jack Sullivan was guilty and that the family should support the accusers over him. I stated that I believed the students and that accountability was necessary. I didn't know that at the time. You could have known. But you chose not to. Correct. Evan Cole didn't answer. My lawyer leaned forward. Evan Cole. Did it ever occur to you that by publicly declaring your brother guilty, by assisting families in crafting consistent statements, by encouraging them to ignore doubts and stay committed, that I've seen how often they are silenced and dismissed, and I didn't want to be a part of that system. Instead, you became a part of a system that destroys innocent people without checking basic facts. My lawyer walked him through every message, post, and statement he helped shape, and made him explain each decision, assumption, and moment he chose certainty over verification. The deposition lasted 5 more hours. Evan Cole's hands were slightly trembling by the end of the deposition, which ended at 8 p.m., and his lawyer pulled my lawyer aside in the hallway. If he could go back in time to April, what would he have done differently? I watched through the glass as they talked. The lawyer kept shaking his head. My lawyer's expression remained neutral. When she returned, she had that look lawyers get when they know they've already won. He's going to settle, she said. He has to. His own words buried him. Everything fell apart at the college board meeting on a Wednesday in April. My uncle Robert, Rob Hayes, my cousin Olivia Hayes, and a few friends who had stayed were there, despite the fact that I had asked them not to attend. The room was packed with parents, faculty, a few reporters, local activists who had been supporting Evan Cole, and some family members I hadn't seen in months. But Rob had said, "We are seeing you be vindicated. We're not missing it." My parents sat in the back corner. My mom had that tight smile she wears when things aren't going her way, and my dad looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Evan Cole was absent. His lawyer had probably told him to stay away. The interim college president, brought in from the district office after the scandal broke, and Dean Whitaker resigned, opened with a prepared statement about transparency and institutional responsibility. The room went silent. After an extensive review of the allegations made against Jack Sullivan, including examination of work permits, inspection reports, security logs, and witness testimony, this board finds no factual basis connecting Jack Sullivan to the alleged incident. Jack Sullivan was not present in Sacramento during the disputed weekend. Our investigation revealed significant procedural flaws in how the initial accusations were handled, and students were interviewed without following proper protocols. He was, in fact, performing licensed electrical work on a commercial job site in this city, as confirmed by multiple witnesses. Murmurs echoed throughout the room. Jack Sullivan has filed civil claims against this institution, Dr. Miranda Pierce, and his brother Evan Cole for defamation and related allegations. Statements were edited and refined by college personnel in ways that jeopardized their credibility, and numerous administrative decisions were made without verification of basic facts. While we cannot comment on ongoing litigation, The college wishes to acknowledge that Jack Sullivan was wrongfully terminated and that his professional reputation was harmed by institutional failures on our part. Someone in the audience shouted something. A reporter stood up. The president gave for order. We are prepared to offer Jack Sullivan a settlement in the amount of. My lawyer leaned over and whispered. Don't accept it. We are going to trial on the defamation accusations. Make an example. I nodded. Evan Cole's case went to trial in June. Civil court, not criminal court, money and reputations, not handcuffs. His lawyer tried everything, claiming good faith reliance on the college's investigation, that his posts were protected opinion, that he was attempting to support victims, and that he had no legal obligation to verify facts. My lawyer demolished him. She brought the jury through every piece of information Evan Cole had disregarded. Every message, encouraging families to ignore misgivings. And every public proclamation of guilt without confirming if I'd even been in the same place. This isn't about trusting victims, she said in the end. It's about what happens when belief becomes a weapon. Evan Cole didn't just fail to verify facts, he actively avoided them because they were inconvenient. He helped manufacture consistency in statements that were falling apart. He pressured families to ignore their children's doubts. And he did all of this in public, loudly, and with absolute certainty. In a 3-hour trial, the jury found Evan Cole liable for $175,000 in damages for lost income, reputational harm, and emotional distress, despite the fact that he was 62 miles away on a commercial job site at the time of the alleged crime. When the verdict was read, Evan Cole's lawyer attempted to respond. My landlord, every vendor who'd pulled contracts, the college department mailing list, and the local contracting association all received official letters, stating that the allegations were false and that the college had settled for $310,000. A public apology, and an agreement to reform their investigation procedures. My lawyer called it reputational remediation. I called it watching them eat crow in writing. My old landlord called me 2 days later, apologized, and offered to be a reference. 3 vendors who dropped me contacted me about new contracts. And the department chair who had overseen my termination had to personally sign every letter. They also paid settlements to the families whose children had been used as props in Dr. Miranda Pierce's crusade. I don't hate Haley Morgan or Breonna Carter. They were 18 and 17 years old at the time, and they were just kids who were duped into doing something they didn't understand by adults who should have known better. Dr. Miranda Pierce manipulated them, and Evan Cole reinforced it. Dr. Miranda Pierce's license was revoked 4 months later after the state board discovered that she had coached students, fabricated evidence, and violated approximately 18 professional standards. The girls were confused, pressured, and surrounded by authority figures telling them what to remember. I blame the adults who used them. I used the settlement money to buy my own building, a 4,500 square foot shop with office space and room for equipment, and rehired my old crew. I didn't move to a new city to start over. Instead, I rebuilt right here in front of everyone. I began bidding on commercial jobs that had dropped me. In August, my parents attempted to reconcile, and when I arrived at the shop unannounced to run conduit for a restaurant renovation, I saw my father's car pull into the lot and knew what was going to happen. It turns out that a $4 million settlement and a court judgment in your favor is pretty good advertising. Within 6 months, I was busier than before the nightmare began. My father began. We thought it was important to clear the air and discuss. Get out of my shop. My mother tried her soft voice. The one she uses when she wants something but needs to appear reasonable. Jack, sweetheart, we were just trying to do what we thought was right at the time. We didn't have all of the facts. You had the material, which I supplied to you, but you decided not to look at it because Evan Cole urged you not to. That's not fair, my father remarked. We were in an impossible situation. The family was divided. Emotions were high. Emotions were high because you let Evan Cole declare me guilty without verifying a single truth, and you supported his actions since he's always been your golden kid. And I've always been the disappointment who works with his hands instead of pushing paper in some corporate office. My mom's eyes welled up. We never said that. You didn't have to. You showed it when it mattered. I returned to work. They stood there for another minute, then left. I haven't heard from them since. The family fracture has never healed. Evan Cole tried to rebuild his advocacy career, but the court judgment followed him everywhere, and he was fired from his nonprofit job 4 months after the verdict. Uncle Robert, Rob Hayes, and cousin Olivia Hayes remained in contact, but everyone else either chose Evan Cole's side or went silent, which was fine with me. Blood doesn't mean anything when those who share it throw you under the bus the first chance they get. Last I heard, he was working at some insurance company doing grunt work for $48,000 a year. His wife, Lauren Cole, left him in September, taking the house, the car, and the dignity he had left. I didn't celebrate, and I didn't feel good watching him crater, but I also didn't feel bad. The real satisfaction came from watching everyone who'd been so certain, so righteous, so convinced they were on the right side of history. It was a cold Saturday in November, nearly 20 months after the accusation, when Evan Cole finally showed up. I was closing up the shop around 6 p.m. when his truck pulled into the lot, and I recognized it right away, the beat-up Ford he'd been driving since college. He waited in the cab for a solid 5 minutes before getting out. And I started loading tools into my service van as if I hadn't noticed him. He approached up slowly, stopping about 8 feet away, and said, "Jack." I completed loading the drill kit before glancing up. "What do you want?" He looked worse in person than I'd anticipated. I wanted to talk about what? About everything. About what happened. About he stopped. I messed up. I know that now. I shut the van door and leaned against it. You drove an hour to tell me you messed up. That's your big revelation. I'm trying to apologize. You're trying to make yourself feel better. His jaw tightened. I was wrong about everything. I should have listened to you. I should have looked at your evidence. I should have checked to see if I was actually there before declaring myself a predator to the entire family. And I should have verified a single fact, before advising families to ignore their children's doubts. Evan Cole, you didn't just make a mistake. You chose to believe I was guilty because it made you feel good, because it allowed you to be the hero, because verifying facts was difficult, and believing in your own righteousness was simple. He didn't respond, and I pushed off the van. I was trying to help, you were trying to feel important, and when the evidence didn't fit your narrative, you just ignored it. I thought I was doing the right thing. But you thought you were the right person. You've spent your entire life trying to be better than me, smarter, more successful, and more important. When those students made their accusation, you saw your chance, finally, proof that you were the good brother and I was the screw-up you always believed I was. His hands were shaking, but you didn't verify my presence because you didn't want to. You wanted me to be guilty because it fit the story you'd been telling yourself since we were kids. The silence stretched between us like razor wire. I lost everything. He finally said. My job, my marriage, my reputation. I know that doesn't fix what I did to you, but nothing. You didn't lose those things because of what I did. You lost them because you prioritized your crusade over basic facts, and when the truth came out, everyone saw exactly who you were. I'm trying to make this right. You can't. Some things can't be fixed with a 20-month late apology. You destroyed my life because it was convenient for you. You made my parents believe I was a predator to make you look better in comparison, and you helped coach families to ignore evidence because you couldn't handle being wrong. I walked past him toward my truck. Jack? Wait. I stopped but didn't turn around. You want forgiveness? You want closure? You want me to tell you it's okay and we can rebuild our relationship? I want to try. Then try this. Live with what you did. Live with the fact that you destroyed your brother over allegations you never verified. Live with the knowledge that when it mattered most, you chose your ego over the truth. Live with the knowledge that every person who praised you for being brave was praising you for being certain about something you never bothered to check. Don't call me again. Don't show up at my shop. Don't send letters, emails, or messages through family members. We're finished. I got in my truck and started the engine. Through the windshield, I could see him standing there in the parking lot, shoulders slumped, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. His hands were in his pockets. His head was down. He looked like a man who had finally realized what he'd done and realized there was no turning back. I drove away without looking back. If you loved this video, please subscribe to the channel so that we can bring you more and better tales. Thank you. Your wedding's not happening, it's your brother's engagement day, Mom texted. I spent $92,000, and married anyway. I didn't argue, you chose him, I chose me. Your wedding date has been cancelled. My mother texted. Your brother has scheduled his engagement party for the same day. I gazed at my phone, repeated it again, and then did something that reportedly surprised my entire family. I replied, that's okay. 20 months of preparation, contracts, deposits, and vendor meetings, all jammed between court appearances. My fiancé and I had put down over $92,000 of our own money, and my mother informed me that our wedding day had been cancelled, as if it were a doctor's appointment. She could easily reschedule for flu season. So I said fine. Then I married my wife on that exact date. Anyway, I didn't notify any of them and posted images from our honeymoon while they were figuring out how to stop an already completed ceremony. Sup, Reddit. I'm Silas. I am 36 today, but I was 34 when all of this happened. I work as a litigation attorney in a mid-sized Midwestern city. I believe we have sports teams, but no one vacations here on purpose. I spend the most of my days in windowless meeting rooms and fluorescent lit halls fighting about contracts that others did not care to read. I am also the older of 2 children. My younger brother, Jude, is 28. And if you asked my parents to characterize us, they'd say something like, Silas is reliable. Jude is special. You can probably hear the golden child alarm siren in the distance. I'm recounting this story today because my wife and I recently celebrated our 3rd anniversary. We went out to dinner, toasted with cheap champagne, scrolled through our wedding photos, and at one point she remarked, "Can you believe your mother still tells people we eloped to avoid conflict?" I smiled, and then realized, no, this wasn't an elopement, and it certainly wasn't out of spite. It was time to stop being the family's backup plan. Growing up, the roles were rather apparent. I was the child who finished his homework without being asked, remembered permission slips, and babysat for free. If something broke, computer, automobile, relationship, everyone turned to Silas for help. He will fix it. Jude was the youngster that only needed a little more time. In high school, he was more accepting about skipping classes. When he forgot to pay his rent in college, he had a little extra cash. He had a little more freedom while job hopping for 4 years because none of his superiors recognized his originality. My folks are not cartoon villains. They're typical suburbanites who worked hard. Dad is an electrician. Mom is a nurse. They paid what they could for my undergraduate studies. And when I enrolled in law school, we all agreed that I would take out loans because money was tight. No hard sentiments. I signed the papers, completed the requirements, and graduated. Then, during my 3rd year of law school, Jude pulled out of his graphic design program 3 states away, claiming that the vibes were off. He came home, maxed out my parents' emergency credit card, and then damaged their car a month later. I discovered out about everything when my mother contacted me crying because the bank was threatening to sue over the card. Their auto insurance rate had increased, and they were overdue on their mortgage. I recall sitting on the floor of my tiny apartment, outlines and casebooks all about me, listening to her sob into the phone. Silas, honey, you're fantastic with this stuff. Can you review the paperwork? Consider calling someone. Your brother did not intend it. He simply becomes overwhelmed. So I did what I always did. I drove home that weekend, organized their bills, called the bank, spoke with the vehicle insurance company, produced a basic hardship letter, and set up payment plans. I didn't pay my debts. I actually couldn't. But I did give them a route map. I also made the mistake of believing I was excellent at it. My parents would always contact me first when Jude caused a mess: lease troubles, HR problems, automobile accidents, bad checks. Mom would whisper on loudspeaker while Dad murmured in the background, "Just tell us what to say." If I ever suggested that Jude should also be on the line, the response was invariably, "He's embarrassed, Silas. Don't make things difficult for him." Fast forward 11 years. I am a mid-level associate at a reputable firm. I'm not making a lot of money, but I pay my loans. I live in a condo with actual matching furniture and shop for groceries that aren't all generic brand. I met Willow at a friend's barbecue. She is a physical therapist who is warm, witty, and brutally honest in a way that I did not understand I needed. On our 3rd date, when I told her a tale about cleaning up one of Jude's messes, she remarked, "So, when do you let them figure it out for themselves?" I shrugged it off at the time. "It's just easier if I handle it." She gave me this look. I'm not judgmental, just interested. Who is it easier for? That question remained in the back of my mind for the next 3 years. My parents now liked Willow. She exudes instant likability, prompting waiters to tell her about their lives. But I could see there was something different right away. Willow established limits when discussing her younger sibling. No, she cannot crash on our couch for 7 months. She needs to learn how to pay rent. No, we are not co-signing her car. Hearing that out loud felt like hearing someone speak a language I knew but had never been allowed to use. I proposed to Willow in a very un-Reddit-worthy manner. We were both fatigued on a Sunday night, resting on the couch, when I blurted out, "Do you want to do this forever?" She held out a ring. She smiled and cried at the same time, which is very typical of her, and replied, "Yes." Our guideline from the beginning was that we would pay for our own wedding. No strings attached. No, this we donated it, so we get to invite my coworker from 1998 rubbish. Her parents offered to pay for her rehearsal dinner and attire. My parents indicated they'd help where they could, but I didn't expect that. We picked a place we both liked, a brick event space downtown with large windows, exposed beams, and the entire Pinterest industrial chic vibe, and reserved it for a Saturday in June around 20 months away. We signed contracts with a caterer, photographer, DJ, florist, and all of the wedding Voltron decorations. We created a spreadsheet. The whole cost, including food, bar, and decor, is approximately $92,000. That figure makes some people gasp. For context, we could afford it. We'd both been saving for years, and I had a "if my student loans don't kill me first" fund that would be used for my wedding and future home after I refinanced. Was there a lot? Yes. Was it imprudent? No. We weren't going to get into debt for it. Jude began seeing a woman called Owen around 2 months after we booked the location. She was kind enough, exuding Instagram influencer energy without the genuine influencer role. Within 10 minutes of meeting her at a family dinner, I knew 3 things. She wanted a large ring, a big wedding, and a lot of attention. Cool. It's not my business. Jude and Owen got engaged 14 months before our wedding date. She tweeted a video of him proposing with a sparkler fountain in the background and the remark, "He finally made it official." The comments were full of "finally," despite the fact that they'd been dating for 7 months. My folks were over the moon. "We're so happy both of our boys are settling down," Mom added, drying her eyes. "We'll have to figure out the timing so we can celebrate properly for both of you." I was grinning. "We've already scheduled for June 15th, next year." She blinked. "Oh, okay, you did say that." There are occasions when you reflect and realize they were warning shots. It was one of them. In the months that followed, everything wedding-related became a Jude and Owen show. My mother would call me, allegedly to inquire about our plans, and within 5 minutes, she'd be discussing Owen's Pinterest boards. "They're considering a destination wedding," she mentioned once, "or something truly special. They simply don't want it to feel little." Willow, who was cooking next to me, raised her eyebrows. I put her on speaker. "Small in comparison to what?" Willow asked dryly. Mom backpedaled. "Oh, no. I did not mean your wedding, just in general." Then followed the first request. Mom contacted me one afternoon when I was between depositions. "So, honey, your brother was thinking, maybe you could move your date a little to give everyone some breathing room. We've already booked everything." I said, "The contracts have been signed. We'd forfeit our deposits. Perhaps the venue would understand. You are a lawyer. You know how to communicate with people." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Contracts, Mom, are not about understanding. They are about dates, money, and signatures. We agreed on June 15th, and she sighed." "Silas, you can be really stiff at times. Can't you just ask?" "No," I replied, and it seemed like a small revolution. "No, I'm not going to ask venues and vendors to reschedule a date we set over a year ago because Jude recently got engaged." She became quiet. "Your brother believes you aren't happy for him. I'm glad for him," I said. "I don't have to erase 20 months of planning just to make him happy." We ended the call gently. "Love you, Mom." "I love you too, honey." But I hung up with a familiar tightness in my stomach. Over the following few months, a pattern emerged. Every chat concerning our wedding turned into a bargain over Jude's. "Could you not prepare a plated dinner? They don't want theirs to appear cheap. Perhaps make your invitation list manageable so that people do not feel forced to attend both. Would you be angry if we shared the same color scheme? Owen adores dusty blue." It was as if our wedding was a spreadsheet cell that needed to be edited to make their calculations work. Willow saw it plainly. "They're treating your wedding as a placeholder," she observed one night as we double-checked our budget, "something they can move around on a schedule." "It's okay," I said automatically. "They're simply excited." She placed her hand over mine. "I love you, but you should listen to yourself. You always say it's all right when it's clearly not. It grows gradually, like a pressure cooker. Leave a comment here." There was a guilt trip there. My mother's not so subtle reminders that, as the oldest, I should be adaptable and set a good example. Apparently, being the older brother meant that my adult life was infinitely adaptable to my younger brother's whims. The final straw occurred on a Tuesday afternoon, 4 months before our wedding. I was in my office drafting a motion when my phone vibrated with a family group chat notice. Normally, I mute that device at work, but the preview said, "Update on the weddings," from my mother, with 3 heart emojis. I opened it. She added, "We are so pleased to report that Jude and Owen have chosen their engagement party date. We've chosen to host it on June 15th so that everyone can be together, and no one has to travel twice. We'll make that the big family gathering, and we'll really celebrate Silas and Willow later, when things are less chaotic." I stared at the television. Then another message arrived, this time addressed directly to me, "Separate the thread from Mom. Your wedding date has been cancelled. Your brother's engagement celebration is scheduled for the same day. It makes no sense to separate the family. We'll assist you locate a more convenient time. Love you. Cancelled. Like a dental appointment. I sat in my swivel chair, the hum of the building's air conditioning suddenly audible, and wondered if I had misread something. I read back through the group chat, through months of messages in which I stated our date and shared photographs of the venue, invitations, and fittings. It was all there. I texted Mom back. Clarify and cancel. You mean you and Dad won't be arriving on June 15th? A few specks appeared, disappeared, and reappeared. Silas, honey, we cannot ask people to choose between the two of you. It is selfish. Jude and Owen's event will most likely be more elaborate, making it easier logistically to center everyone around it. You and Willow are more low-key. You will understand. We'll organize something intimate for you later, perhaps in the fall when things have calmed. There it was again. I'd understand. The dependable, adaptable one who would reorganize his life so her beloved kid did not have to. Something clicked, as if a lock were sliding into place. I recalled every time I'd cleaned up their financial mess while they kept Jude from speaking to a single creditor. Every year so mature is tossed at me as a consolation prize rather than genuine encouragement. My needs were consistently presented as less urgent, since I was strong. I remembered Willow, who had spent hours tasting cakes, trying on outfits, and dealing with guest lists under the impression that my family cared at least a little bit. I considered the contracts in a folder in my office, the non-refundable deposits, and the cancellation terms that I had read. The fact that none of those documents mentioned the younger brother's social calendar. I typed one sentence back. That is okay. Mom reacted almost immediately. I knew you would understand. You're such a great big brother. We will discuss fresh dates soon. I turned my phone face down, leaned back in my chair, and stared at the ceiling. Surprisingly, I wasn't outraged in the sense you might think. It seemed more like someone had plucked a very old splinter from my flesh. It was painful, but it felt clean. That night, I told Willow everything. I handed her my phone and allowed her to peruse the thread in silence. She finished, carefully placed the phone down, and glanced at me. Okay, she said. We've got options. Option 1. I said, half joking. We cancel the wedding, elope in Vegas, and send them a postcard. Tempting, she said. Option 2, we move it and go to great lengths to keep the peace, but you will always despise them. Hard pass. Option 3, she paused, her eyes narrowing slightly, as she does at the gym when she's going to add more weight than the trainer recommended. Option 3 is to quit acting as if they own the day simply because they have your DNA. I blinked. How does that look practically? You're the lawyer. She explained. What does the contract say? So we opened up the folder on my laptop. Venue, complete payment due 45 days prior, no date changes without a 60% penalty. Caterer, paid in installments and non-refundable. Photographer, retainer, non-refundable. The same story applies to DJs, florists, and rentals. Long story short, if we cancel or alter the date, we will lose a significant amount of money. She asked for a short version. I shut the laptop. In short, the wedding will take place on June 15th. She grinned slowly. Good. Now we simply need to decide who will be invited to the wedding that we have already paid for. We didn't devise a great retribution strategy. No dramatic statements or ultimatums. That isn't our style. Instead, we did something that my family had not expected. We treated our wedding like it was our own. Over the next week, we quietly updated our guest list. Originally, there were about 140 attendees, with about 60 on my side, including cousins, family, acquaintances, and other people my mother insisted on. We had already distributed save the dates but not formal invites. We narrowed it down to 78 people, largely Willow's family, close friends, and a few of my relatives who had continuously treated me like a human being rather than an emergency hotline. We met with the venue, and as calmly as I can argue emotion, I explained that there would be some family turmoil. If anyone turns up and says the event has been cancelled, they are incorrect. Willow and I are the only persons permitted to make decisions. The organizer, a woman in her 50s who had clearly witnessed some events, nodded slowly. I got it, she said. We've been in situations like this before. We'll have security at the door and a visitor list. No one returns to the ceremony area unless you permit them. I texted my folks one more time just to be technically correct. Hey Mom, just so you know, Willow and I have reserved the June 15th date. We hear that you will be holding Jude's engagement party that day. We will miss having you there, but we will not change our plans. She called within 30 seconds. Silas, do you mean you're keeping it? We just told everyone that it isn't happening. Then tell them how it is. I said. To my own astonishment, my voice remained steady. Or don't. It's your choice. That's not fair, she said. Family comes first. We can't separate everyone like that. It is selfish. I took a breath. Mom, you did not ask us before announcing your plans. You canceled my wedding without even checking the documents or determining the cost. You made a choice. I'm making mine. The day is reserved. We are getting married. She began to cry, but then became angry in the middle. You are doing this to punish us. To punish Jude. You know, he's always battled, whereas you've always handled situations well. Can't you be generous just once? Mom. I spoke quietly. I have only been here once in 30 years. Silence. I am not asking you to cancel anything, I continued. If you want to make the engagement party the primary family event, go for it. People can attend either one or both, if they feel like driving back and forth. But we're not rescheduling our wedding around my brother's engagement celebration. She sniffed. So that's it. That is it. I added, we'd love to have you there, but we're moving forward regardless. We finished the phone with that horrible, cruel politeness that seems sharper than yelling. In the weeks that followed, I learned through the grapevine, from an aunt who does not believe in subtlety, that my parents were informing everyone that we had postponed our wedding, that we were being cautious about overlapping dates, and that I was possibly not ready yet. That's why I promised to focus on Jude first. I didn't contradict them, not because they were accurate, but because dealing with a false narrative to defend themselves was no longer my duty. I'd already spent too many years as the family fact-checker. Instead, I focused on Willow, work, and logistics. I've lived my life. I took the days off during the wedding week, which were marked on my calendar as trial preparation, because lawyers are strangely more respected when they are allegedly in court. Willow also took time off. We confirmed with all vendors. I triple-checked the ceremony time. I dropped off decorations at the venue. Mom texted 2 days before, don't forget, Jude's engagement party starts at 3:30 on Saturday. We'll take shots earlier. Everyone's so excited. I looked at it, showed it to Willow, and we both shook our heads. Our ceremony started at 2:30 p.m. The morning of our wedding, I awoke before my alarm. The hotel room was dim, and the city remained quiet. For a moment, that old familiar anxiety returned. Am I doing something terrible? Am I hurting my family? Willow rolled over, hair in a tangle, eyes half open, and mumbled. You are thinking too loudly. I laughed nervously, she admitted, but also strangely calm. We aren't doing anything wrong, Silas. I know, I replied. I just wish it didn't have to be so split. She reached for my hand. Your parents caused the schism when they informed you that your wedding had been cancelled. We're simply refusing to disappear. The day itself was truly beautiful. I won't bore you with every detail, but here are some snapshots. My best friend tying my tie and saying, dude, you look like you actually sleep sometimes. Willow walking down the aisle in a dress that moved half the room to tears. The officiant smiled as we stumbled over one line of our vows, and then laughed together. The way the light came through the large warehouse windows as we said I do. My side of the room looked different than I had previously imagined. Fewer relatives but more colleagues and friends. My Aunt Diane had quietly texted, I'll be there wherever you say, honey. My cousin drove in from another state without informing my parents. From Willow's side. Her parents are both overjoyed that their daughter is truly happy. You cannot fake this. Her sister, who delivered a speech about how I once fixed her flat tire in the rain and refused to accept payment. We took photographs. We ate. We danced. During a slow song, Willow looked up at me and whispered, Are you okay? I realized I was. I actually was. Around 5:45 p.m., while everyone was still on the dance floor, my phone vibrated on the table next to the cake. I took a check at it. 15 missed calls from Mom and Dad. Several from Jude, with a flurry of text previews. I did not pick up. We had arranged for a car to take us directly from the reception to the airport. Our flight was scheduled for 8:40 that evening. People tossed biodegradable confetti as we left, thanks to Willow's eco-hero sister. We slid into the back seat, both slightly tipsy, exhausted, and giddy. Are you ready for our very special, very note-ankled trip? Willow inquired, grinning. Ready? I said. We turned our phones on airplane mode as we boarded. Honeymoon 9 days in Costa Rica, which we could afford because I'd said no to an extra videographer package and Willow had found absurdly cheap flights. It wasn't until the next morning, eating breakfast on a balcony overlooking a ridiculous amount of greenery, that we turned our phones back on. My screen exploded from Mom. Where are you? Call me now. Are you really doing this? Tell me this is a joke. Then a new one. We drove to the venue to stop this, and they said you were already married and gone. How could you? From Dad. This is not how family behaves. You blindsided us. From Jude. Wow. Man. Couldn't let me have my day. You made Mom cry on my engagement party. Engagement party, by the way, had apparently started late because my parents had first driven to our wedding venue to put a stop to this nonsense. Aunt Michelle again providing commentary. By the time they got back, a bunch of guests were confused. The caterer was annoyed, and Owen was furious that her photo schedule was ruined. None of that was my intention, but it was the natural consequence of choices they made. I sat there on that balcony, the sounds of the jungle weirdly soothing, and scrolled through the messages. My heart pounded, but not from panic. More like adrenaline and relief mixed. Willow washed my face. Bad? She asked. Intense? I said. I handed her the phone. She read, lips pressed together, then nodded once. Do you want to respond now? Later? Not at all. I thought about it. I'm a lawyer. I don't like leaving things ambiguous forever. But I also didn't want to get into an all-caps argument over WhatsApp. I typed one group message to my parents and Jude. I'm sorry you're upset, Willow. And I told you months ago we were keeping our wedding on June 15th. You chose to plan another event the same day and to tell people our wedding was cancelled without our consent. We proceeded with the date we had booked and paid for. We would have loved to have you there. That offer still stands for future milestones if healthy boundaries are respected. For now, we're on our honeymoon and won't be on our phones much. Talk when we're back. I read it out loud to Willow. Too harsh? I asked. It's factual, she said. You're not insulting anyone. You're describing what happened. I hit send. Mom replied almost immediately, even though I'd said we wouldn't be on our phones. I can't believe you're playing the victim. You embarrassed us in front of everyone. Don't bother coming around for a while. I put the phone face down and looked out at the trees. Willow reached for my hand again. You okay? Honestly, I said, yeah, for the first time, I think I am. In the weeks after we got back, the fallout unfolded predictably. We went low contact with my parents. No blocking, just stepping back. If they texted accusatory paragraphs, I didn't engage. If they sent something neutral, hope you're well, I responded politely. I refused to relitigate the decision. Extended family started to reach out quietly. My aunt called. For what it's worth, she said. Your mom told everyone you'd agreed to postpone. When Diane and I realized your invitations hadn't changed, we put two and two together. We're proud of you for standing your ground. A cousin DM'd me on Instagram. Your wedding looked amazing. I'm sorry. I believe the postponement story. If I'd known, I would have been there. Even a couple of my parents' friends, people I'd known since childhood, sent cards addressed only to us, saying things like, we heard there was some confusion. We're happy you and Willow did what was right for you. Meanwhile, Jude and Owen had their own drama. Apparently, during the engagement party, several guests asked why my wedding was cancelled. Someone let slip that. No, it hadn't been. My parents had just decided not to go. Owen was furious that her special day was overshadowed by questions about us. Jude was furious at me for causing that, despite the fact that I was physically in another country. I didn't respond to his angry texts beyond one message. I did not ask Mom and Dad to drive to my venue. That was their decision. 14 months later, Jude and Owen's wedding actually did happen on a completely different date. We were invited technically. The invitation arrived with a sticky note from Mom. It would mean a lot if you made an effort to put things behind us. We sent a gift from their registry. A nice one. We did not attend. I had a trial that week, which was true. But even if I hadn't, we weren't ready to pretend everything was normal, just so they could have pretty pictures. Over time, things settled. Not in a storybook reconciliation way, in a real, slightly messy adult way. My relationship with my parents is distant now. We talk a few times a month, sticking to small talk about work and health. I'm no longer the family's crisis manager. When Jude had job trouble and Mom begged me to just look at his contract, I said no and let the silence sit. Willow and I bought a small, squeaky house and filled it with photos of people who actually showed up for us, not the ones who tried to cancel our. Sister-in-law said my kids were too disruptive. 6 months gone. Family thought we needed space until the truth hit the group chat. No more space, just the truth. According to my sister-in-law, my kids shouldn't be at family events because they were unruly. I kept them at home and agreed. Family gatherings began to be canceled the next month, until a relative questioned my spouse about the reason. As it happens, the words were sent via text message, which in some ways made them worse. Your children simply cause too much trouble at family get-togethers. Perhaps you should skip the next several. Sitting in the Target parking lot, I read it 3 times. Before the words truly registered, My 5-year-old twins were humming in their car seats behind me. My sister-in-law, Vanessa, sent the message. When people believe they are being helpful, they casually inflict cruelty. While I was packing groceries into my trunk, I received a digital slap in the face. No phone call, no conversation. The family of my husband Logan had always been close-knit, getting together monthly for barbecues, birthdays, and any other Sunday that someone felt needed a celebration. I loved that about Logan and me when we were married 8 years ago. My own family was dispersed over 3 states, and if we were fortunate, we might only see each other twice a year. It was like winning the lotto for the Whitaker family. 3 years before Logan and I had met, 10 years prior, Vanessa had wed Trevor, Logan's older brother. She was familiar with all the inside jokes and the unwritten hierarchy because she had been a member of the family for a longer period of time. I had always felt like Mother was evaluating me, identifying areas where I was a little short in ways she never completely explained. However, this was not like the others. These were my kids. Lily and Noah, the twins, were full of life. Yes, they were 5. They asked 8,000 questions about everything they saw, laughed louder than library voices, and sprinted when other children were walking. In addition, they were curious, humorous, and nice children who loved their cousins and pleaded to spend nearly every weekend at Grandma Margaret's house. The message on my phone weighed heavily on my passenger seat as I drove home, my hands gripping the steering wheel. I was checking out 15 minutes ago when it was sent. I was unaware for 15 minutes as those words awaited their explosion. When I arrived, Logan was working on rebuilding the carburetor on his vintage Mustang in the garage. His elbows were covered in grease. "Our children are too rowdy for family gatherings, according to your brother's wife," I said without a preamble. His expression changed to one of perplexity as he looked up. "What?" When I handed him the message, I saw his face change from bewilderment to rage to something more elusive. I was hurt. Perhaps Logan had always been the one to mediate disputes and make everyone laugh when things got heated, he said. "She can't be serious." But there was no conviction in his voice. Logan cleaned his hands on a cloth, leaving dark stains, and said, "She sent it while I was at Target. I've been trying to figure out how to respond. 3 years ago at Thanksgiving, Trevor's daughter Harper physically tossed a dish, and no one reacted. The kids are fine, they're normal kids. Our children are 5 years old, and Harper was 3. What is she anticipating? Little grown-ups." Something chilly settled in my chest as I leaned on the workbench. What if this is how everyone feels? What if everyone has been discussing it and she is the only one who is prepared to speak up? Logan stated forcefully. Then they're all wrong. However, I could also see uncertainty flickering in his eyes. That evening, after the twins had gone to sleep, we discussed it in circles, alternating between hurt, confusion, and rage. Logan wanted to give Trevor a call right now. Take it out. Protect our kids' honor as if we were involved in a family drama. I was hoping for something new. What if we simply concur? I said. Logan gazed at me. What? It would be crazy if we simply said, "Okay, you're right. We'll keep them home. See what happens." Vanessa is being absurd, but we won't keep our children away from relatives. Despite his protests, I could see the notion growing in his head. The difficulty of it, the interest in seeing what would truly occur if we called her bluff. The following morning, I texted Vanessa back, typing, deleting, and retyping as my coffee grew cold. "Most likely, you're correct. We will not attend the upcoming events. I appreciate your candor." She responded quickly. "That's probably for the best. I'll see you shortly." My jaw tightened when I saw the exclamation mark. The first thing we missed was Trevor's birthday cookout. 3 weeks later, it was planned as the type of afternoon event that typically lasted into the evening, complete with excessive food, protracted games, and Trevor's awful playlist that somehow always featured 4 Jimmy Buffett tunes. As Logan watched the twins chasing each other across the backyard that morning, he remarked, "Are you sure about this?" His mother, Margaret, called at around 2 that afternoon. "No," I said, "but I want to see if anyone notices, if anyone cares." Trevor continues wondering, "Where are you guys?" With a deliberately casual tone, Logan stated, "We couldn't make it today. There was a problem with the children." "Is everything all right? Are they ill?" "Mom, they're all right. We simply decided that staying home this time would be preferable." A pause. "Has something taken place?" "No, nothing took place. The next one will be caught by us." His hand trembled a little when he hung up. Gatherings were not missed by the Whitaker family. You showed there despite being ill, having a disagreement with someone, and having a strong desire to go somewhere else. There was a noticeable absence. It meant something to be absent. 4 weeks later, Margaret had her birthday dinner. We would not be present, according to another text. Margaret called right away this time, her voice tense with worry that bordered on reproach. What's going on, Logan? You have now missed 2 occasions. Your dad is becoming anxious. Mom? We're all right. Merely occupied with the children. Too busy to spend time with family? Weighted by years of Whitaker family values and expectations, the question loomed between them. Family was the most important thing. Family was the most important thing. Family members arrived. Logan said slowly, the kids can be a lot. We reasoned that perhaps it would be simpler if we avoided the large gatherings. For whom is it easier? They are 5 years old. Children are meant to be active. I never minded, and neither did your father. She didn't press harder, though. And I could hear the bewilderment in her quiet after we hung up. The next event was the monthly family game night, which was typically held at Trevor and Vanessa's house. The kids would run wild upstairs while card tables were set up in the living room, until someone would unavoidably cry over a stolen toy or a contested game rule. Citing the twins' nighttime routine, I apologized in a text message to the family group. Vanessa gave a thumbs up in response. No one else spoke. A Whitaker family tradition was Labor Day weekend. 3 hours north, Logan's folks had a lake house. Each year, the whole extended family got together for a long weekend filled with swimming, fireworks, and Margaret's renowned potato salad, which she forbade anyone else from making. We didn't miss it. Not after 8 years of marriage. A week prior, Logan asked, "We're really not going?" And I could hear his voice faltering. "Would you like to go?" I would like everyone to wonder why we aren't going. I would like someone other than my mother to be aware of our absence. Why we weren't packing for the lake cottage was beyond the twins' comprehension. Lily kept bringing me her ruffled pink bikini, which she had chosen especially for this May trip. Every day when we were heading out, Noah inquired, certain that I had just neglected to give him the date. "Sweetheart, we're not going this year." As he constructed a block tower, I gave the 5th explanation while folding laundry in the living room. However, why? His tiny face furrowed in perplexity. "We visit the lake cottage every time." What is the best way to communicate family politics and adult pettiness to a 5-year-old? How do you let your child know that they were rejected without making them feel bad about it? This year, we're doing something different, I said in a light tone. Instead, we're heading to the local festival. Games, rides, and fireworks are all planned. Will Harper be present? My heart tightened. Like the twins, Harper was 5 years old and the daughter of Trevor and Vanessa, running in a pack with the other cousin children. The 3 of them had been inseparable at family get-togethers. After saying plainly, "No, honey, it'll just be us this time. I like it better when we're all together," he returned to his blocks. That afternoon, I needed to talk to someone outside of the Whitaker family bubble, so I called Monica, my best friend. She hadn't heard the whole story, but she had heard fragments of it. She said, "Let me get this straight." After I had given her the rundown. "Since your sister-in-law said that your children were too unruly, you have been missing family gatherings for 4 months, and essentially no one has questioned this other than Logan's mother. You're also angry that folks aren't making a greater effort to win you back. It sounds trivial when you say it that way. It sounds nothing like petty. You seem to be hurting and trying to find out who genuinely cares." Monica's tone grew softer. "But what if no one passes the test, honey? What if they don't mind your absence at all?" For weeks, the question had been bothering me. I suppose we are aware of our current situation, and Logan is comfortable with perhaps upsetting his family over this. I could see Logan pushing the twins on the swing set through the window, their happy screams echoing across the yard. "Actually, I'm not as angry as he is." He continues stating that there's no use in acting like we're close if his own brother won't defend us. Trevor is in a difficult situation. His brother versus his wife. His spouse was mistaken. That shouldn't be a difficult situation. Monica let out a sigh. "You're correct. However, marriage causes people to act strangely. Occasionally forces them to justify the unjustifiable." I sat with her question after we hung up. What would happen if no one passed the exam? What if this entire procedure simply led to our children growing up without grandparents and cousins, us being permanently cut off from Logan's family, and the large, chaotic get-togethers I had always cherished? An hour later, Logan discovered me looking at nothing on the couch. "You're reconsidering your decision." "I'm thinking about everything." He took a seat next to me so that our knees were in contact. "We can still leave. We can arrive at the lake house and act as though nothing is wrong. Then what? For the rest of our lives, pretend? Make sure the twins don't dare act like kids around Vanessa by walking on eggshells? No, we confront her. You've been avoiding the confrontation, but we have it. I'm not trying to escape it. I have a point." "What's the point? That we are capable of being as petty as she is?" Logan raked his hands through his hair, irritated. I was upset and wanted them to miss us so they would understand what they were losing, so I consented to this. However, Lily asked me today if Grandma Margaret no longer loved her, and I was at a loss for words. A wave of guilt swept over me. She stated that if Grandma loved her, she would visit. She's also not incorrect. It's 20 minutes to my folks' house. Once or twice a week, they used to visit. We hardly see them anymore. They are welcome at any moment, they are aware of that. Do they? We have been retreating from everything. Perhaps they believe that we too seek space from them. I hadn't thought of that. Margaret and George were innocent bystanders in this catastrophe, in my opinion, victims of Trevor's collusion and Vanessa's brutality. However, they believed that we were the ones who had changed. It was us who had begun to make excuses and quit attending. I told you to call your mother. This week, invite them to supper. Not the entire family, just them. What about the lake house? I felt the weight of the choice as I closed my eyes. We follow our plan. One more event won't change anything if, after 4 months, no one is still asking questions. However, I could hear the uncertainty in my own voice. The day before the Labor Day weekend, Lauren, his youngest sister, called. Logan said the twins have been having a hard time with all the changes, so Mom said, "You're not coming to the lake." What's that about? Just taking it easy this summer. Since when? On Mother's Day, they appear to be all right. The last event we'd been to while Vanessa's message was still clear and concise was Mother's Day. The twins had assisted Grandpa George with his jigsaw puzzle, found eggs, and played with their relatives. Happy child behavior, normal, child conduct. Logan's statement, "Things change," was not a response at all. Instead, we brought the twins to a neighborhood festival over the Labor Day weekend. Allowed them to stay up far too late, ate expensive carnival food, and watched fireworks from a blanket in the park. I kept checking my phone to see if there were any messages from the lake house, wondering if anyone was inquiring about us, even though it should have been enjoyable. Families were strewn across lawn chairs and blankets during the crowded festival. As they waited for nightfall and pyrotechnics, everyone angled toward the sky. When the merchant wasn't watching, Noah slightly cheated to win a plush dinosaur at the ring toss. Before the fireworks began, Lily slept out on Logan's shoulder. Around 8, my phone buzzed, exhausted from the excitement and heat. A picture in the group conversation for the family. Harper, the daughter of Trevor and Vanessa, is perched on George's shoulders as they both smile for the camera while the lake shimmers behind them. Trevor's caption, "Perfect day at the lake." I gave Logan a look. His jaw worked as he gazed at it for a long time. In order to avoid waking Lily, he whispered softly, "They're not even pretending to miss us." Then came 3 additional pictures. On the dock, the entire family. The picnic table was set up with Margaret's potato salad. A horrible dive into the sea was caught in mid-splash. Life was continuing as usual, but without our presence. Enjoying yourself? Lauren sent me a private text message. "Festival's nice," I replied. "Nice fireworks." 3 dots appeared, vanished, and then reappeared. Mom can't stop staring at her phone. She's probably hoping you'll decide to turn up. My chest constricted. "I'm sorry, tell her. Tell her for yourself. Give her a call." However, I didn't. Stubbornness, arrogance, or simply being worn out by the whole thing. I let it go. While my son cheered, my daughter slept, and my phone remained silent in my pocket, I watched the fireworks burst overhead in cascades of crimson and gold. Logan had been mentally counting. He had a count ready when Margaret called on Sunday night. "Mom, that's 6 events." When she inquired about Uncle Walter, he replied, "We have missed 6 family get-togethers in the last 6 months. And you're curious about what's truly fascinating? Lauren and you are the only ones who have explicitly questioned us about it." Margaret's voice emerged from the speaker. "Tight and weird. Your Uncle Walter inquired about you today, Logan. I wanted to know if there was something that was bothering you. What made him believe that? Since you weren't present. As you haven't traveled since May. What should I tell people?" As I braided Lily's hair while she watched cartoons in the living room, Logan glanced at me. "Inform them that we are taking a vacation from the large events. The children needed a break. There's no logic behind that. Children adore the lake cottage. Perhaps they are too enamored with it. Perhaps we all needed a little room." Margaret let out a sound of frustration. "From what space?" "Your household. You're beginning to worry me, Logan. You must let me know if something is amiss." "Mom, everything is okay." However, we both realized that something was amiss. Where inquiries belong, there should be silence. People who had never previously accepted our absence did so with ease. Vanessa's thumbs up emoji had often surfaced in the group chat, confirming our justifications and endorsing our choice to refrain. On Tuesday, Margaret and George joined us for dinner. I prepared Margaret's favorite dish, pot roast, and used real napkins rather than paper towels to set the table. After receiving a lot of coaching on indoor voices and remaining still at the table, the twins were brimming with enthusiasm. My infants. As soon as Margaret entered, she embraced both twins as if she hadn't seen them in weeks rather than years. George was uneasy as he stood in the doorway with a bottle of wine and a plush animal for each twin. It was an odd dinner. We discussed everything but the obvious. George's golf game, Margaret's garden, and the twins' swimming lessons. It was like walking on ice during the service discourse. We're all scared to focus on the important things. Lily was the first to break. Are you upset with us, Grandma? Margaret's dish clattered as her fork struck it. I'm crazy, darling, no. Why do you think that? Since we are unable to visit your home and you no longer visit us. Margaret's voice was heavy as she said, you can always come to our house. She glanced first at Logan and then at me. They believe they are unable to visit. With caution, Logan stated. We haven't told them that. However, they are astute enough to realize that we will no longer be attending family events. Why? George's voice was rough as he asked. Additionally, don't say that the kids need downtime. What is actually happening? Logan and I looked at each other. We had decided to let Vanessa's parents make their own decisions rather than throw her under the bus. However, the plan felt cruel as Margaret's tears barely held back, and Lily's bewildered little face sat there. I carefully responded to someone who said the twins were too rowdy for family gatherings. We were advised that taking a vacation from the events might be beneficial. In a matter of seconds, Margaret's expression changed from bewildered to enraged. Who made that suggestion? Does it really matter? It really does matter. George hardly ever used profanity. Was it Vanessa? The silence was sufficient. With a loud scrape, George got up from the table. Ever since Trevor brought her home, that girl has had an opinion about everything. Always planning, always getting better, always being smarter than others. But he shook his head at this. There is a limit to this. Margaret whispered, George, sit down. It won't help to get angry, will it? At family gatherings, our grandchildren feel excluded. For months, our son has been absent from our lives. Anger is, in my opinion, quite appropriate at the moment. Logan began, we're not trying to cause problems, but his father interrupted. You're not creating issues. You're making them public. There's a distinction. He took a heavy seat again. How come you didn't tell us? Because we were curious to see if anyone would notice. If anyone was interested enough to inquire as to why we were absent, I confessed. We noticed, of course. Margaret's voice cracked. We simply thought, I'm not sure what we thought. That you felt overburdened. We were being aggressive. It made sense when Lauren said, maybe you needed space to figure things out as a family of 4. It takes time for new parents to get used to it. Mom, we are no longer new parents. The twins are 5 years old. I am aware of that. Margaret dabbed at her eyes. However, you had never previously left us out, so I assumed it was something we did. I did something. The guilt was overwhelming. This had been about Trevor, Vanessa, and the willingness of the extended family to let us go. George and Margaret had been unintentional casualties. I apologized. There was nothing wrong with you. We ought to have had a direct conversation with you. Indeed, you ought to have. I can see why you didn't, but George's rage had turned to something more depressing. There are times when you need to know who will stand up for you without being asked. The twins were given extra hugs by their grandparents as they went to bed. I quietly cleaned the kitchen with Logan. There was a hum from the dishwasher. The tap was dripping. Crickets sang in the summer darkness outside. Trevor will hear something from Dad. With a dish towel in hand, Logan turned to face me and finally said, I know this is going to blow up the whole family. Maybe it needs to. Do you really believe that? That breaking everything apart is worth proving a point. I considered Lily's query. Margaret's tears. George's expression when he discovered his grandchildren believed they were unwanted. I'm not sure anymore. I believe that by letting our children know they didn't need to change in order to be accepted, I was safeguarding them. Perhaps, though, I'm just being obstinate. You're not obstinate. You're wounded. Both of us are. The towel was thrown onto the counter by Logan. In essence, Vanessa said our children weren't good enough. And rather than retaliating right away, we conducted this strange social experiment to see who would stand up for us. That's just sad, not obstinate. He was correct. It was all depressing. I was absent for 6 months because I was too proud to confront him directly. My children missed their cousins for 6 months because I wanted to show that people should stand up for us without being asked. I said, we'll figure out what to do next after we see how that goes after the anniversary party. And we'll know where we stand and determine whether that's a family worth remaining in touch with, if nothing changes and everyone simply continues to accept that we're gone. Even to my own ears, the words sounded harsh, but I meant them. Family was more than just shared last names and DNA. It was appearing. When someone was absent, it was considerate. Rather than making comfortable assumptions, it was posing the difficult questions. That test was not being met by the Whitakers. Perhaps it was time to come to terms with that and go on. Trevor and Vanessa's anniversary celebration arrived in August. The Whitakers would turn a significant milestone 12 years into an all-day celebration complete with catered food, a champagne toast, and most likely someone's awful karaoke performance of their wedding song. 5 weeks beforehand, the invitation was sent out via the family group chat. I didn't even try to justify myself. We're not going to be able to make it, just send a simple, "Well done." Vanessa's answer. Thank you. I miss you all. Across the couch, Logan tossed his phone. She is not missing us. She is glad we are gone. I am aware. What's the point, then? What do we prove? I didn't have a suitable response. We were stuck in the experiment, waiting for something to break, because it had taken on a life of its own. The week prior to the celebration, Lauren gave another call. Really, what's the matter between you and Trevor? Have you two gotten into a fight? No fight, Logan said. Why? Because Mom is going crazy trying to figure out why you've missed everything since Mother's Day. Trevor and Dad had a conversation last week, and now there's this strange tension. She believes you're upset with her. I have no grudges. Then attend the celebration. In particular, Trevor asked if you would be attending. Logan gripped the phone tighter. You told him what? That I was unaware of. That no one knows what's going on with you two and that you've been strange and aloof. What did he say, too? A pause. Perhaps you needed some space, he said, that it's not always necessary for families to do everything together. Logan's expression froze. That was said by Trevor. Yes, which is strange because whenever someone skips Sunday dinner, he usually complains first. Logan sat in silence for a long time after he hung up. Trevor is aware. At last, he spoke. He is aware of our reasons for not attending. He hasn't spoken to anyone either. He is aware, of course. Vanessa tells him everything, but he allows everyone to believe that we are the issue, that it's us who are voluntarily withdrawing. Margaret made 3 calls on the day of the anniversary celebration. Logan remained silent. He finally answered on the 4th call. Tell me what's happening in this family right now, Logan, James, Whitaker. The full name treatment nearly made him laugh, something she hadn't done since he was 17 and caught him slinking out. Mom. Nothing's happening. Don't tell me lies. Since Mother's Day, you have missed 6 family gatherings. Except for that one dinner, your kids haven't seen their grandparents in weeks. You're being secretive, according to Lauren. Your father is certain that you are divorcing, and Trevor says you need space. We will not be divorcing. What then? Logan gave me a look. I gave a nod. Find out from Vanessa why we haven't been visiting. What's she got to do with anything, Vanessa? Ask her. Margaret hung up with a frustrated noise. It was within an hour that the fallout began. With a tight, angry voice, Trevor called. What did you tell my mother? I advised her to find out from your wife why we haven't been going to family gatherings. Logan, is that? It was you who ceased to attend. Vanessa informed us that our children were too unruly. We should sit things out, she said. Quiet. Long enough for me to believe the call had ended. She said that when? May. Immediately following Mother's Day. If you don't believe me, look at her texts. More quiet. Trevor's voice then became quieter. I never heard her say that. I am aware that you have been avoiding me due to a text message. Only your parents and Lauren questioned it. So we've been avoiding it. The absence of us didn't seem to bother anyone else. Every time we said we couldn't make it, your wife literally gave us thumbs up emojis. How should we feel about that? Trevor didn't answer and hung up. 25 minutes later, Lauren called. Logan, oh my God. I can hear Mom talking to Vanessa on the phone from upstairs. What took place? Logan gave an explanation of the text. The months of silence, the choice to remain at home. Lauren paid attention without interjecting. At last, she said, nobody knew. Logan, I swear to God, no one knew. We all assumed you were experiencing something and were reluctant to discuss it. We tried to give you space for 5 months. Trevor kept saying that you might need space to deal with whatever was going on. He gave the impression that he was more knowledgeable than we were. Logan tightened his jaw. He was aware of something. He simply kept it a secret from everyone. Apparently, the anniversary celebration was a failure. Lauren texted updates that Margaret was crying and had left early. George, bewildered and agitated, followed her. Within an hour, half of the family departed. not knowing what was going on but feeling that the festivities were coming to an end. That night, Vanessa gave me a direct call. Not Logan. She said, "You could have just spoken to me. Not a preamble. You texted me to let me know that my kids were too rowdy for family get-togethers." What specifically was I meant to say in response to that? I was attempting to assist. Lily sobbed so loudly during dinner that no one could hear her, and Noah knocked over the drinks table on Mother's Day. Noah apologized right away after unintentionally bumping the table. Harper took Lily's toy, which caused her to cry for 7 minutes. They are 5 years old. What were you expecting, Vanessa? Instead of letting them run amok, I thought you would take action. It was a slap of an accusation. My kids are not untamed. They are typical, active children enjoying themselves with their cousins during family get-togethers. Instead of sending me a passive-aggressive text and then acting as though nothing was wrong for 5 months, you ought to have had a face-to-face conversation with me if that really bothered you. I assumed you would pick up on it and begin handling them more skillfully at events. I wasn't expecting you to simply stop coming. It would be best if we sat things out, you literally said. Forever wasn't what I meant. Sharp and resentful, I departed. Then, what did you mean? Before you determined that our children were well behaved enough for the Whitaker family, how many events were we expected to miss? 6 months? 18 months? Until they reached adolescence and learned how to sit quietly and motionless like mature children. You're exaggerating. I'm acting like a mother. To be honest, Vanessa, your text isn't even the most telling aspect of this entire situation. You were okay with it when we stopped coming. You didn't ask us again. Never inquired about our well-being. You simply gave me thumbs-up emojis and carried on with your parties as if we had never happened. For that, she had no response. The following morning, Margaret unexpectedly arrived at our house, looking as though she had been crying the entire night. While Logan was preparing breakfast for the twins, I let her in. She said, "I owe you an apology," as if she had never been in our living room before. I ought to have inquired more. Should have realized something wasn't right. I meant it when I said, "It's not your fault." This is how we decided to handle it. By vanishing. By giving you the impression that your son no longer desired to be with his family. Her voice broke. What has that been like, do you know? Are you wondering what went wrong? What did any of us do incorrectly? Logan emerged from the kitchen, followed by the twins. Lily hurried over to her grandmother and put her tiny arms around Margaret's legs. Are you depressed, Grandma? With tears streaming down her face, Margaret picked her up. Sweetheart, I really missed you. We also missed you, Lily said gravely. We're too noisy, Daddy said, so we can't visit the lake house this year. Margaret looked at Logan abruptly. Did you tell them that? Logan muttered, that's what Vanessa told us. For the comprehension of a 5-year-old, I simply simplified it. Margaret carefully sat Lily down, and in a matter of seconds, her expression changed from grief to rage. That girl needs to give an explanation. The following Sunday was the family meeting. Everyone assembled at Margaret and George's house, where we had celebrated innumerable birthdays, holidays, and regular Sundays. The twins ran off to play with their cousins as soon as Logan and I arrived, acting as though nothing had changed. With a set and pale face, Vanessa sat beside Trevor on the couch. Trevor refused to give Logan a look. Margaret appeared older than I had ever seen her when she stood in the center of the living room. We will discuss what transpired. Nothing needs to be fixed, Vanessa stated. We're going to figure out how to fix it, she said. All of this is a miscommunication that has been exaggerated. Margaret said icily, you told your sister-in-law that her kids weren't welcome at family events. It's not a miscommunication. They were disruptive, I said. I was attempting to assist. Offering to assist with watching them would have been helpful. It would have been beneficial to recommend things to keep them busy. Treating them as family rather than as issues to be solved would have been beneficial. From her window-facing chair, Lauren raised her voice. Since I learned, I've been considering this a lot. The problem is, Vanessa, you've never enjoyed being the object of attention at these events. Harper's attention was diverted by the sudden presence of 2 more young children when Logan and his wife welcomed twins. Was that the true purpose of this? That's absurd. Vanessa yelled. Attention has nothing to do with this. What is it related to, then? Logan inquired. Because from where I sit, you decided that my children weren't suitable for family gatherings, persuaded your husband to support your play, and then sat back and watched my mom slowly deteriorate in the belief that we would desert the family. What was useful about that? At last, Trevor said something. I was unaware that she had texted you. She informed me that you all needed a vacation from the large gatherings because you were feeling overburdened, that you would request some room. Logan laughed hollowly. And you think that? Trevor, you know me. Have I ever requested a break from this family? Have I ever chosen to skip events? Individuals evolve. Perhaps having twins was more difficult than you were admitting. It's challenging. Being a parent is difficult, but it's much more difficult when your family tells you that your children are no longer welcome. There was silence in the room. The twins were laughing in the backyard, and I could hear their voices mixing with those of their cousins in the background. Happy kid sounds. Normal kid sounds. George's throat was cleared. This is what will take place. You're going to say sorry to Logan and his wife, Vanessa? Not whatever you're going to say to make things better, but a sincere apology. Trevor began, Dad. George firmly stated, not finished. You're going to consider why, without consulting your brother, you were so quick to accept your wife's account of what happened. And the rest of us will reflect on why we did not demand answers for 5 months. He glanced at me and Logan. That also applies to you. You made your point, and I can see why you did it, but in the process, you caused harm to your mother. We are all harmed by you. Logan gave a slow nod. You're correct. Mom, I apologize. Margaret dabbed at her eyes. Simply put, never do it again. I don't care if someone says your children are noisy, disruptive, or anything else. Nevertheless, you bring them. If someone has a problem, you let me handle it. Vanessa jerked to her feet. I refused to sit here and listen to childish lectures. I was attempting to improve the situation. For whom is it better? I inquired. Because we didn't benefit from it. For our children, it wasn't better. For this family, it wasn't better. She reached for her handbag. Trevor, hurry up, we're heading out. Trevor remained motionless. You should apologize to them. I'm not sorry for being straightforward about a problem that everyone else was too courteous to bring up, Trevor said softly. Then you can go. In any other situation, Vanessa's expression of shock would have been amusing. But I'm staying. Glancing around the room, she waited for someone to support her in telling Trevor that he was acting irrationally. No one said anything. The door slammed behind her so forcefully that it rattled the windows as she walked away alone. At the sound, the twins ran in, with Noah going to Logan and Lily climbing into my lap. Noah questioned, Is Aunt Vanessa mad? Yeah, buddy, said Logan. Margaret got down on her knees next to him and said, She's mad. Because we're too loud. Noah gave this careful thought. You're not too loud. You're perfect exactly the way you are, and anyone who says differently will have to answer to me. All right, Grandma. Can we get some cookies right now? The tension subsided. Still in tears, Margaret laughed and went into the kitchen, followed by the twins. The rest of us sat in the living room, trying to figure out how to rebuild what had been broken. Trevor apologized privately to Logan later that day. I didn't hear what was said, but Logan came back red-eyed and quiet. And when Trevor left, he pulled both of us into a long hug. I apologize, he said. I should have known, should have asked. Yeah, Logan agreed. You should have. Are we okay? Logan thought about it. We will be. But Trevor, if you ever take her side over mine again without talking to me first, we're done. Brother or not? Trevor nodded and left without arguing. Vanessa didn't come to the next family gathering or the one after that. When she finally showed up in October, she kept to herself, speaking only when spoken to, watching the twins like she expected them to start breaking things at any moment. I didn't care. Let her be uncomfortable. Let her feel like the outsider for once. The twins ran through the house with their cousins, playing some elaborate game that involved capes and foam swords. Noah knocked over a plant in the hallway. Lily spilled juice on the carpet. Normal kid chaos that Margaret cleaned up without comment, laughing at their apologies. Your kids are great, Lauren said, sitting beside me on the porch while we watched them play in the yard. I'm sorry, Vanessa made you think otherwise. I never really thought otherwise. I admitted. I just wanted to see if anyone would fight for us. If anyone would notice we were gone and demand we come back. We noticed. We just handled it wrong. Yeah, you did. She smiled ruefully. At least you got a good revenge story out of it. I chuckled. Is that what this was? Revenge, wasn't it? I watched Lily tackle Noah in a pile of leaves, both of them shrieking with laughter. Watched Margaret come out with cookies for all the kids. Watched Trevor help his father set up the badminton net while Logan supervised, the two of them falling into old patterns of brotherly competition. Maybe, I said. Or maybe it was just standing up for my kids. Making sure everyone knew they belonged here as much as anyone else. They do, Lauren said firmly. And if Vanessa ever suggests otherwise again, she'll have all of us to deal with. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The kind of perfect autumn evening that the Whitakers would have traditionally stretched into night, lighting the fire pit and roasting marshmallows while kids fell asleep in laps and on shoulders. Margaret announced s'mores and the twins cheered. Noah grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the fire pit. Lily jumped on Logan's back, demanding a piggyback ride. Vanessa watched from the porch, separate and alone. Trevor glanced back at her, but didn't move to join her. The distance between them was new, a gap that hadn't existed before all this started. I'd heard from Lauren that they'd been fighting, that the anniversary party blow-up had exposed cracks in their marriage that had nothing to do with us. Vanessa's need to control everything, to manage everyone, had apparently been a problem for years. We'd just been the catalyst that brought it into the open. I almost felt bad. Almost. But then Lily laughed loud and bright and completely unself-conscious. And I remembered why we'd done this, why we'd stayed away and waited and let the silence speak for us. My children belonged here. They belonged everywhere. And anyone who suggested otherwise could sit alone on the porch and think about what they'd lost by trying to push us out. The fire crackled. The twins ate their weight in marshmallows. Margaret caught my eye across the flames and smiled. The kind of smile that said family. That said, welcome home. That said, we've got you. 5 months of absence for one perfect evening of belonging. Maybe that was the revenge. Or maybe it was just the price of making sure everyone knew exactly where we stood. Either way, we were home and we weren't leaving again.